It's Locked On Giants Live with Traina, Tainah, and hopefully Dog as we get you ready for training camp and get caught up on all things New York Giants. That's coming your way next on the Locked On Giants podcast.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily New York Giants podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, New York Giant fans, and welcome to another edition of the Locked On Giants podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast family, your team every day. And welcome, everybody, to Locked On Giants Live. You got Traina and Tainah, and in a little bit, we're going to have Dogs. So the Three Musketeers are back for the first time in God knows how long, but I'm excited. Training camp's getting ready. I got my two home guys here there to talk about Giants football. We've got you guys and gals out there in the audience. So thank you for taking part of your night to join us. Tainah, what's good, my man?
I'm happy to be back talking Giants with you. We're getting a lot closer to actually being out of the nonsense season. We're starting to get some things to talk about. Obviously, the big news dropped this week about Saquon Barkley. I'm sure that'll be at least a large portion of what we talk about tonight. Training camp's coming up. I'm just happy to be here. I'm happy that football is, I don't know what, less like 50 days away. It's crazy. It's gotten here so quick. So really excited for this upcoming season.
As am I, and we're going to have a lot to talk about for sure. And again, folks, Dog will be in here a little later. Those of you watching on YouTube, we'll just do a switch over for the screen so we can fit him in. As always, he's always welcome. But before we do anything, I got to say this, Tainah. I've got to tell you this because it just brings a smile to my face every time I see it. Yeah. Your reaction video with Dog for the first three draft picks, whenever I'm having a lousy day or I need a pick-me-up, I just love that video, man. That's classic.
Yeah, how could I not be excited on draft night?
I loved it.
Those are the guys I wanted. So I mean, you couldn't beat our draft. At least everybody's usually always happy on draft night. So we'll see how we feel in 2 or 3 years. But the instant reaction, yeah, felt great. Can't wait to see how these rookies perform this year. And yeah, hopefully we have a lot of happy moments this year. Last year was a lot of fun. Hopefully this year's even more fun.
Yes, absolutely. All right. We've got a lot to talk about. And Kelly, yeah, we do have to touch on Saquon. Sorry, but hopefully we won't be spending the whole show on Saquon. I don't think we will, but we do have to talk about that. We will take your questions probably after the first commercial break in about 45 minutes to an hour. So hopefully you guys and gals will stick around with us. And, you know, Chris, we've got to start off obviously with the Saquon news. I mean, you and I both were talking both on Twitter and in DMs. We were both confident it would get done. It didn't get done. It came out that there was a difference of about $2 million. And a lot of people were like, well, why didn't the Giants just, give in and give Saquon the $2 million? I think, for Joe Schoen to just draw a line in the sand and say, okay, look, this is my price point. I'm not going beyond it. That's responsible cap management. Now, I know people will say, oh, it looks like, he's cheap. They don't want Saquon. They don't value him. But I go back now to that interview that Saquon did. What was that podcast? The Money Matters podcast.
Yeah.
And this is what I suspected all along. And I wrote this. I also talked about it on my show, that Saquon and the Giants didn't see eye to eye as to what exactly his role was and what kind of player he was. Yeah. So that being said, Chris, I mean, what are your thoughts with how this all played out? And do you think this is the beginning of the end for the Giants and Saquon?
I do. I think this is probably Saquon's last year as a Giant. Maybe I'll be wrong. Maybe they'll tag him again. But you got to think that if they weren't willing to extend him this year, why would they extend him next year, a year older? He could rush for 1,600 yards this year, have a great year. He's still a year older. He's a year closer to that expected cliff, and that running backs fall off of. So could I see the Giants tagging him again? Perhaps, if he has a really good year this year and stays healthy. But I think and I could even see Barkley forcing a trade after this year if the Giants were to tag him again. I think things are going to get messy, but it is what it is. I thought a deal was going to get done, especially when I started to hear the numbers that Joe Schoen was willing to go to. We heard, I think it was from Dunleavy. And like you said to me on Twitter, sometimes the wording isn't necessarily what you want to go by because there's different types of guaranteed money. But when I heard 22 guaranteed, I was like, if you're Saquon, how do you turn that deal down? You have no leverage at this point. And I understand he was worth more than that had he hit the open market. He didn't, though. You have to realize the situation you're in. He was not going to hit the open market. If he got $22 million guaranteed, I think he was silly to turn it down. That's 2 franchise tags guaranteed. You're a running back in a declining market. I understand he thinks he's worth more than that. But in the situation that he was in, he was kind of between a rock and hard place. So if that is accurate, if that is true, I am surprised that Saquon Barkley and his representation, as the clock came to zero, didn't accept that deal. Again, I don't know all the specifics, but if Shane was willing to go there, I thought it was kind of a meet in the middle type deal. He wasn't overcommitting to Saquon, but he was giving him a good enough commitment in the situation he was in that I think Saquon should have taken it. It is what it is. Short term, do I think it hurts the Giants? Yeah, I do. If Saquon holds out this year and does not play, because I don't think we have a team equipped to have a great running game because of our offensive line currently. But I think Shane was looking at it long-term and saying to himself, in a year or two, we're going to build up this offensive line. We'll be able to manufacture a ground game, and I'm not going to damage my future to appease to him in the present, even though we know that we need him in 2023. So I understand it from Shane's perspective. It's a tough decision, but that's what he gets paid to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And do you think, Saquon talked about possibly sitting out. I don't think he does it. Training camp, yes, I could see that being the case. But I would be absolutely shocked if he sits out the season. Now, I posted an article over on Giants Country, Shady McCoy, suggesting, and it's funny, JC Treader, I think, also dropped this hint as well in general, that, okay, you come in and, all of a sudden my back hurts or my hamstring hurts and I can't play. I'm sorry. I don't see Saquon doing that. Saquon, I'd like to think is a high character guy. You start pulling that garbage. Look at where it got Kadarius Toney.
Yeah.
So I don't see that happening right now. There's really no leverage. The only thing that I think Saquon can negotiate at this point, maybe he gets a little bit more to the 1-year franchise tag as far as, raising it from 10.1 to about 11 million, which is what I believe the APY was for the Giants contract offer. And then maybe include a clause that says we won't tag you again. That's what I think is going to happen.
Really?
That's what I think is going to happen.
Interesting. I just hope that he shows up week 1 and he's ready to go. I think what we've heard, I kind of expected this. If they didn't work out a deal, he's not going to show up to training camp because he's not going to risk injury. He's got a lot on the line, right? If he gets hurt this year, he's worth nothing. I'm not going to say nothing, but he's not worth near what he is now if he gets hurt. So he's going to try to limit the possibility of that. But when push comes to shove, $600,000 a week, I don't see him passing that kind of money, regardless of the amount of money he has in the bank already.
And, not for nothing, but this whole argument that, he's going to stay away so he doesn't get hurt in training camp. You got to remember something. The snaps in training camp are controlled.
Yeah.
Chances are Saquon wouldn't have played in the preseason games anyway. Maybe a snap here and there. But for the most part, I didn't think he was going to play in the preseason game anyway.
If I recall, he didn't play last year in preseason.
No, I don't believe he did either. So this whole argument about getting hurt, and here's the other thing. Now they've got the GPS data. They can dial back the snaps. They can monitor that. Now, Saquon comes in maybe later in the summer, and he's been working his butt off, which he does. He's a hard worker. But where exactly is it? Do you have that GPS data to say, okay, where exactly do we start him off? So it kind of, mucks up the whole picture, I think, with getting him ready for week 1. So that's why I think there was the reports that he might not be ready for week 1. And, we'll have to see how that works out. But I just don't see Saquon leaving, almost $600,000 per week on the table.
Yeah,
I
agree with you. And that's what I think too right now. But I didn't see him leaving $22 million guaranteed on the table either in the situation that he was in, and he did. So I hope we're right, because I think we do need him this year. and I hope he's ready to go week number 1 against the Dallas Cowboys. I'll never say never. I think if he's thinking rationally, he's going to do exactly what we just said. He's going to play week number 1, but people do silly things. I think it'd be a mistake on his part. I don't think it's going to help his leverage at all. If anything, everybody's saying that if he holds out, he may show how much he means to the team. Well, let's think about it from the other side. What if he holds out week number 1 against Dallas and Daniel Jones looks really good and the Giants win? So, I'm just saying it's a possibility. So if you're Saquon, take the money, take your $10 million, go out there this year, perform, and either force the Giants to tag you again and make your $12 million guaranteed, or let them, then you hit free agency if they don't tag you, if they're not willing to sign you, and you get to see what you're worth on the open market.
I mean, for what it's worth, Shady said in that clip that, I wrote about that, the Giants have a better chance of winning with Saquon in the lineup against Dallas. And I looked it up. They're 0-8 with Saquon in the lineup against Dallas.
Yeah.
That being said, you want him on the field. I'm not trying to say, you don't want him on the field. But you know what? There is one thing that Saquon said in that Money Matters podcast that gives me hope that, cooler heads will prevail when the time comes. And he said, look, at the end of the day, and I'm paraphrasing here, at the end of the day, I want to win a championship in New York, and that trumps anything with the money. So that's why I remain optimistic that cooler heads will prevail. For what it's worth, and I'm not obviously privy to what advice Saquon got, but he turned down a deal that was reportedly worth $14 million. He turned down a bye week deal that was reportedly worth, I think, $12.5 million. And now he cost himself money based on the advice that his agents might have given him. And, he added CAA, and that was unusual. You very rarely see a player represented by two different agencies, excuse me. So that was a bit unusual, but here we are. Dog just entered is in the background. So let me just get him up and running. Just bear with me a second, guys. I just got to switch stuff around. But Chris, go ahead if you want to weigh in on that.
No, you brought up the switching of the agency and adding the second agency. When he did that, I was like, I thought that was even more of a sign that they were going to get a deal done, because I thought back to the Daniel Jones thing. Not that he added a second agency, but he made a change in his representation like 5 days, 6 days, whatever it was before he signed the deal. I'm like, okay, to me, this is kind of a sign that Saquon knows he needs to change course and they're going to get this done, and still didn't get done. But Bad Dog, we're going to do it tomorrow.
What's going on? What's going on, everybody?
Long time, Dog. Long time, man.
It has been a long time. Wife had some car trouble, and that's what it was. That's the delay. So
that's okay.
We had to replace the catalytic converter, which if anybody's ever had to replace one of those knows it's one of the most expensive parts in the car. So say if you don't want to sign the tag, I could use a couple grand.
Dog, you're going to be interested in one of the sponsors for tonight's show, because that's applicable. eBay Motors is one of our sponsors for tonight, and they're running a special. So that commercial break's going to be coming up a little later on. So I wasn't
expecting that. So that was the delay today. But
all right, no worries. You're here now. We're talking Saquon. Dog, give us your thoughts on just real quickly. We were talking about the lack of the deal getting done. Just give us your thoughts on where things are with, or what you think, the Saquon thing happened, the whole, how it played out.
So we hear all these rumors about what he was offered, how much a contract was. Does anybody really know, Patty? Like I've heard $12.5 million all the way up to $14 million. I heard that there was problems with the guaranteed money, but were there incentives in it? Were there clauses in it? What was the contract? What did it look like? Does anybody really know? Obviously, they couldn't come to an agreement. I think that, and I've made a couple of videos on this. I made one today, as a matter of fact. I think Saquon Barkley's agent overestimated the running back market. I just feel like that's what it is. In any market, Chris, I guess we took over.
Keep talking. Oh, am I frozen?
No, you're good. I don't know where Patty went.
We took over a channel again.
We took it over. But no, so, supply and demand drives any market. And if there's a high supply and a low demand, then the value drops, and vice versa. If there's a high demand and a low supply, the price increases. It's true with anything in this world.
Yeah.
The running back market's dried up. This day and age, it looks like running backs are getting pounded for the 5 years that they're there, and then they kind of move on. The last 10 Super Bowl champions, none of their running backs made more than $2.5 million. The NFL's gone in a different direction. So I want Saquon Barkley to come back here. I don't want him to not be here. But everybody that is mad about the fact didn't sign a long-term deal and may hold out, brings up the Daniel Jones contract. Well, that goes to the point that I just made. Supply and demand. How often? You're muted though.
Muted. Can't hear you. I'm gonna. Well, she's trying to work that out.
Can you hear me now?
Yes. You're good. Yeah.
Like I was saying.
I apologize, folks. My microphone got unplugged, so I had to back out and come back in. So sorry about that.
No problem. But like I was saying, with Daniel Jones, people are mad. You overpaid Daniel Jones. But that speaks to my fact. Supply and demand. How many franchise quarterbacks are out there? People can say he's not a franchise quarterback. Okay, that's your opinion. Yeah. But I've said this like in the video today. How hard is it for the Bears to find a quarterback? How about the Jets? What are the Jets done? In the last 14 years, they've drafted 3 quarterbacks in the top 5, and none of them are there anymore. Wilson's there, I guess, but he's not. They went out and got Aaron Rodgers. So the Jets can't do it. The Bears can't do it. A lot of teams can't get a franchise quarterback. So people can say whatever they want about Daniel Jones. I think in 2 years, he's going to be in the middle of the pack, lower third, because every year cap goes up, contracts go up. But Daniel Jones got paid what he got paid. Jalen Hurts got paid what he got paid because the supply of a franchise quarterback or a starting quarterback in the NFL anyway is the demand is great. The supply is low. The running back's the complete reversal. So
you hit it on the head, Bad Dog. You hit it on the head. And I made a comparison. Like I made it to like real life terms, like, everyday live jobs. Like a quarterback is like a doctor, where a running back is kind of like a construction worker. You can't find doctors easily. That's why they make a lot of money. You have to go to school for years. Supply and demand. Construction workers, as great as Saquon Barkley is, can you replace Saquon Barkley with one player? No. But history has shown you in the NFL, if you build an offensive line, you can have a great running game with average running backs. It's supply and demand. There's no such thing as a quarterback by committee. There's no such thing as a left tackle by committee. There's no such thing as a CB one by committee, a wide receiver one by committee. There's a running back one by committee because you can manufacture a ground game with average to even slightly below average running backs. Look at Isaiah Pacheco last year with the Chiefs.
Yeah.
When you have a good all-around roster, and I think Shane was not thinking just about this year. He's thinking about the next 2 or 3 and the way that he is envisioning building his football team. And as much as I love Saquon, and as much as I was hoping they would find a deal in the middle, which for me was like a 2-year guaranteed worth of money where you could easily get out after that. That was what I thought was a reasonable deal for both sides. It didn't happen. Long term, I would have done exactly what Joe Shane did. So even though Saquon's my favorite player, I can't bitch and moan about it because long term, I think he made the right decision.
Yeah, and to your point, Chris, I think when Dave Gettleman was here, the vision was the offense is going to flow through Saquon Barkley. Now they're moving away from that. Saquon is still going to be a big part of this offense. Don't get me wrong, but it's not necessarily going to flow through him. They've added, Waller. They've added Hyatt. They've added, Paris Campbell. They brought back Slayton, Hodgins. It's not going to be the Saquon Barkley show. It's not going to be like it was a few years ago when it was the Odell Beckham Jr. show. The Giants are moving away from that. And I say it's high time. No disrespect to Saquon. Saquon's an amazing player. He can carry an offense if you ask him to, but that's not the way to go because if God forbid he's missing or, we saw last year teams figured out how to shut him down, then what do? You need versatility. You need to be versatile as an offense. You need to have different guys who can step in if, plan A is blocked. So I like the thinking here by the Giants.
Yeah, look at what else. Dalvin Cook got released. Dalvin Cook is no bum. He's 27 years old, one of the best running backs in the league. They released him. Ezekiel Elliott, his best years maybe behind him. They released him. Josh Jacobs had 1,600 rushing yards last year. Franchise tag. Tony Pollard, great year. Franchise tag. This is nothing out of the ordinary what the Giants did with Saquon Barkley. And unfortunately for Saquon, he has no leverage. I think he's playing. I think he's going to hold out the entire preseason, training camp, exhibition games. I don't blame him. I think week one, he's signing the tag because number one, $10 million is a lot of money. I don't care who you are. If he doesn't play, he loses $10 million. Who the hell wants to do that? Number two, he sits out for a year. He's a year older. Yep. And the running back market ain't going to go up for a guy that just sat out a year when there's always a fresh crop of running backs coming in from college and cost way less. He's not going to do himself any favors. If he plays in the tag and he blows up, the one bad thing that could happen to him is the Giants could tag him again. That's the one.
And that's another 12
And from his perspective, if he gets injured next year, guess what? He's not getting any kind of offer.
Exactly.
That's why
he's going to end up costing himself even further. So he is taking a huge, huge gamble because, look, great. He stayed healthy all last year, although he did have the shoulder issue, but he didn't miss any games due to injury. What are the odds, given that the pounding that position takes, of that happening again?
Yeah, and the other thing is, Patty, when he had that game against the Texans where they gave him the ball like 37 times, so he had a massive workload in that game. Yeah. And people noticed after that he kind of fell off a little bit, like he got worn down. And, there's an extra game now that they play. They play 17 games now, not 16. So there's another game of pounding because they're not playing in the preseason anyway. So it doesn't matter how many preseason games they play. So he gets an extra game of pounding. So the running back position and most of those running backs, you got the freaks like Adrian Peterson who never aged. Some guys do even better when they get in their late 20s. But for most of the time, the running back's prime is right out of college. Those first 5 years, the time from the 21 to the time they're 26, that's usually their prime. And then maybe they kind of even out. And then about 29, 30, they start to decline a little bit, depending. I mean, Barkley keeps himself in great shape. Yeah. We know that. The guy's he's a freak. I mean, he's a specimen. There's no question about it. But it does. It sucks that they couldn't come to it. I blame his agent for that. I don't think Saquon's the type of guy that's like, I need an extra $1 million. I think that's the agent. And like when I just came in, I heard Chris talking about how he changed up the group and everything else. And when he did that, I thought maybe they're going to get something done.
That's what I thought too.
Yeah. So,
but, just a couple of quick points though. You mentioned that what did he have? Like 35 carries in
it was a lot.
Which, by the way, if you go back and I don't know if you saw that Money Matters podcast, but he was talking about how during the bye week, I think it was, he had conversations and the Giants gave him his compatible.
I'm curious, by the way, Patty, and I know where you're going with this.
Yeah.
I was thinking as he said that, what two running backs, I'm going to throw out my guess, and then I want to get your guess. What two running backs do you think the Giants said, this is your type of running back? Because he seemed like he's good. I think my guess is this. Chubb and Dalvin Cook. Those were the two names that came to my mind.
Who was the first one, Chris?
What?
Who was the first one?
Nick Chubb.
Yes.
And Dalvin Cook.
Yes, I agree with you. That's what came to my mind as well. And here's the other thing, then, and to prove their point, it's funny. I don't know if this was done intentionally or what, but to prove the point, if you remember, they were playing the Texans, who had a crappy pass defense. I mean, if the Giants were going to open up the passing offense, that would have been game to do it. And what did they do? They ran the ball down the Texans' throats just to maybe, I don't know, prove. And again, I don't know if that was done intentionally or a coincidence, but it kind of proved the point because that was the highest number of carries Saquon had, which I found interesting. And not for nothing, but, while we can probably agree Saquon can do everything, this year, I always got the impression, listening to the coaches and reading in between the lines, that they were going to maybe scale him back a little bit to keep him fresh so that he doesn't have to take 80+% of the snaps, whether that meant taking away the third down blocking duties or whatever the case may be. They were going to maybe scale it back a little bit.
Yeah.
So I wonder if that factored into the equation. It goes back to what you were saying about, now you don't really have to have a bell cow. If you have a good offensive line, you can have a running back by committee and manufacture a running game.
That was
what long term he's doing.
In one of my videos, I mentioned that real quick, Chris. I said, would you rather put all the money into one position in the running back, or would you rather put it into the 5 guys in front of the running back? I mean, me personally, I'd rather put it into the 5 guys in front of the running back.
You got Andrew Thomas coming up.
By the way, Miles Sanders, they made a Super Bowl. Miles Sanders ain't an Eagle anymore. They didn't pay him.
Yeah.
There's another guy, and the Eagles are a good example of what a good offensive line can do. Not that Miles Sanders is a bad running back. He's not Saquon Barkley, but
he was his backup in college.
Right. So you, like Patty said, you win with an all-around team. You can't focus on one position, and especially the running back position. And being an old school guy, I love the running back. I grew up, watching Barry Sanders. I saw Walter Payton play. So Eric Dickerson. Like, I'm not mentioning that guy from Dallas because he's overrated, and Tiki Barber's better. And I'm going to keep saying it, Cowboy fans, because Tiki Barber is better. And Tiki belongs in the Hall of Fame, and I hope Carl Banks gets in the Hall of Fame. It's about time Carl Banks got recognized.
Yes, agree.
That he's a
absolutely agree.
Jacket would look good.
Coughlin, by the way, Coughlin belongs there too.
Yes.
Well, you know what? Selfishly speaking, I'd like to see Coughlin and Eli going together.
Yeah, with Eli, it makes sense.
I think that would just be really, really special if the two of them can go in together.
Yeah. I to just show up my thoughts on. I sympathize with Saquon too, though. I don't want anybody to be like, I don't understand where Saquon was coming from. Because, yes, he got screwed, but it's not the Giants who screwed him. It's the NFL. It's the franchise tag. I can't blame the Giants for playing by the rules.
Business.
And doing what every other team does. That's what a good business, a good organization does.
And also, to a degree, you question what kind of advice he got from his agent.
Yeah.
Did she maybe overestimate the market? Now again, I don't know what the structure of the contract is, so I'm reluctant to really, criticize her heavily because I don't have that detail.
Do we know, Patty, though, at least what the money was over? Because, like I said, I heard 12.5 million. I heard all the way up to 14
We
million.
never found out what the guaranteed was.
Okay, but what did
the guaranteed had to be at least the equivalent of this year's franchise tag and next year's.
Like 22 million? Is that what?
But if you go and you see this is what I didn't understand. You go and you look at what Daniel got and what Dexter got in their contracts. They got the sum of the two franchise tags, plus I think about 5% over or something like that. I forget the percentage.
Yeah,
that's what I thought would get it done with Saquon. So I had projected for guaranteed money. I had projected, I think, somewhere between 26 and 27.5. So I was kind of surprised when this last offer came out to just, reportedly 22, I think it was 22 million, which is not that much more than what Bijan Robinson, a rookie, is getting on his entire contract. His entire contract, of course, guaranteed. So I was a little surprised with the guaranteed money. I thought it would be a little higher. And who knows? Maybe, that's what Saquon's side was looking for.
Yeah, I agree with you. I thought it was going to take 24 or 25. That's what I said all along, because a little bit more, that's kind of meeting in the middle, a little bit more than the minimum that it was going to take, which was 22 million. But at the end of the day, if I was Saquon and they offered me the 22 million and they weren't budging and it was down to the wire, I'm still taking that money because of all the risks that we talked about, especially at his position with his injury history. He's coming off a season where we didn't just play 17 games. Granted, he played 16 regular season games. He sat out the last. He played 2 playoff games on top of that. So he put more wear and tear on his body than he ever has since he's been in the league. I'm shocked if they offered him a legitimate $22 million guaranteed that he didn't take it. But I wish him the best. I hope he has a great year, and I hope we tag him again because I want him to remain a Giant. But it is.
Yeah, I really hope that at the end of the day they can all get past it. Right now, look, emotions are high. Saquon is upset. He's probably a little devastated, but hopefully cooler heads will prevail. And that's why, look, would you like him in training camp next week? Absolutely. But I'm not going to sit here and kill the guy if he doesn't show up.
I mean, either I wouldn't.
Opportunity for him to clear his head, continue his training. Let this all die down right now, because right now I'm sure emotions are high. There's a little bit of bitterness.
The media would be hounding him. I mean, you're part of it. He'd have a lot of. That's where everybody would be.
Exactly. And that's going to be it's going to be a question on a regular basis. Listen, just spoiler alert. I have Mark Lewinsky on the program tomorrow, and Lewinsky, I didn't really ask him about Saquon because at this point, what is there left to say? And when we got finished taping, Lewinsky said to me, "Thank you so much for not asking me about Saquon." I said, "Look, Mark, at this point, what more can you say that hasn't already been put out there?"
Yeah.
I'm sure, you obviously would like to have him on the field, have him in the locker room. I get all that. I'm of the, I try to ask questions that I don't know the answers to versus what I can guess what the answer is going to be. You know what I mean? So look, it's going to be a question. I guarantee you, look, first day of training camp, which the first media avail is the 26th. The players report the 25th. We get in the 26th, and we will have Shane and Dable joint presser. I guarantee you that most of the questions are going to be about Saquon. And I guarantee you, Shane, in his opening statements, going to talk about it quickly and say, look, don't want to talk about it afterwards, but there will be questions. I know there will be.
Yeah, and they'll say they don't want to talk about it, and the media will still ask. You know that,
And
Patty.
they have to. I get it. I look, they're doing their job. I get it.
That's just what Chris said too. I'm not unsympathetic to Barkley. Something else I mentioned in the video is usually when this type of thing happens, 80% is usually against the player. The player is greedy. The player wants all his money because $10 million doesn't register to us. That's not reality.
Yeah.
But it's for them, it's relative. So I mentioned, if you have a job and you're doing the same job as one of your coworkers, you have the same position, and you feel you're actually doing a better job than your coworker, you make 80 grand and they make 90 grand, you're going to say, how come I'm not making 90 grand or 95 grand? So yeah, in the grand scheme of things, $10 million to the three of us, everybody watching, most likely, unless Saquon's watching. Hi, Saquon. No, I'm just kidding. $10 million is just something that doesn't register. We can't fathom that amount of money. But again, it's relative to his coworkers or his peers, the other running backs, his equivalent at that position. So I get it. That's something you have to take into consideration before you're like, he's just being greedy. And again, I don't think this was Saquon at all. I think this was his agency.
I agree.
This up. I don't think this is Saquon at all. And I want Saquon back here. I think he's coming back here. I hope he kills it. I hope the Giants give him a damn deal. That's what I hope happens. And I hope we win.
But they're not going to that, dog. Saquon can rush for 1,800 yards this year. We would tag him again. But if we weren't going to give him a deal this year, you think they're going to give him a 3 or 4 year deal next year when he's 20? No. I just don't. I don't think that's going to happen at this point.
You've got Andrew Thomas. You've got Xavier McKinney coming up. You've got to make a decision what you're going to do with Leonard Williams for the foreseeable future. Which I wonder, if Saquon's first agent, Kim Miali, I wonder if she was maybe, in her advising him, said, look, the odds of the Giants franchise tagging you again, given that they have these guys coming up. Now, Thomas, obviously, they picked up the 5th-year option, so they don't have to worry about that. But Leonard, they would have to worry about. They'd have to worry about McKinney. So maybe they figured, okay, we'll take the gamble and dig in because there's no way they're going to tag you again next year, which I think is a big gamble because if they get deals done with McKinney, like they did with Daniel Jones at the deadline, if they commit to Leonard and they get a deal done there, that's a gamble on their part.
Daniel Jones's money, they can move around. So, like, if
at that point, yes, they can restructure.
They need a little bit of extra cap room to tag Barkley. Jones is 40 against the cap next year. I got news for you. If Daniel Jones is good this year, they're going to move that money. They're going to be like, okay, we trust him a little bit more. We'll give him a little bit more of a commitment. Let's move $10 to $12 million of that cap hit. Let's spread this contract out a little bit more so we could spend a little bit. So they're going to have the ability to tag Barkley again if they want to. So,
which is exactly why it was imperative that they got the deal. Because somebody said they should have. Someone in my comment section, they said they should have tagged Jones and gave Barkley the money. No, because you can't move that money. And Daniel Jones's tag was way more than Saquon's.
Yeah.
So you sign Daniel Jones, so you can maneuver the money around and can restructure the contract and make more money if you want to bring in Saquon Barkley next year and give him a deal or whatever they do. Plus, I'm pretty sure the Giants' cap situation is even better next year.
It's going to be better next year. This year it was better, but I made this point. They have about, I want to say 3.8 million going into the summer. That should get them through. I don't think that's enough to get them through the season, though. They're going to have to move something somewhere. Yeah. What that something is, whether it's extending Leo, which I don't think is going to be the case, or what I think is going to be the case is doing something with Tyrod Taylor, which they can get some money there. And then, but they're not going to do anything until after the cuts are made and they see, okay, what money are we getting back from all these 1-year veteran minimum deals we threw out here? Because they'll get money back on that stuff. So they're going to want to see where they're at the end of training camp and then decide whether or not they've got to start, doing other deals. But I would definitely get Tyrod Taylor done because this is his last year under the last year of his contract. And who's your backup after Tyrod Taylor? Who's stepping in for
If
Daniel
he's willing to
Jones?
sign a deal, another year or two, and you could spread out the money, I'm completely for that. Yeah.
So, I mean, that's what I see happening. So, anyway, I mean, guys, final thoughts on Saquon, and then we'll take a quick break, and then we'll start talking training camp because I know there's a few people in the
Patty,
chat
really
room who
quick,
are like, enough about Saquon.
You might know this because I'm not sure if Saquon doesn't sign the tag, Giants get that money. Is that how that what happens to that money?
No, well, it during the season, if he doesn't sign the tag,
Is it game by game or whatever?
Yeah, what happens is I believe it gets prorated back.
Okay.
1/17. So the base salaries are divided over
Gotcha.
17 weeks or 8.
That's what it is. I remember reading that.
It's over 17 weeks.
Yeah, that's
So
what
they
it
would
is.
actually get a cap credit.
Yeah.
Now I'm not sure.
I wasn't sure how that
will apply next year.
Okay, I wasn't sure how that.
I'd have to look it up. I
have a question, Patty. Actually, one of my somebody asked me this on Twitter. I wasn't sure of the answer. If the Giants, they're not going to do this, but hypothetically, if the Giants were to rescind the tag, could they extend it before? Because I know the rule is on the tag you can't. But if they were to rescind the tag, could they still work out a deal before the year starts with Saquon Barkley if they wanted to? Could they do that?
I don't believe so. I think that would be circumventing the tag.
You can't do it, right? I didn't think so.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
If they rescind the tag, he becomes an unrestricted free agent.
And then
he's free to negotiate with any team.
Yeah.
I don't believe he can do it with the Giants.
But
I saw that question
my
too.
final thoughts to answer the question, to wrap it up in a bow. I think Joe Schoen long-term made the right decision. If Barkley wasn't willing to sign a deal in that $22 million range where you could get a clear out after 2 years, Shane made the tough decision. He knows he's going to get ridiculed by a large part of the fan base, the talking heads on ESPN, who say that, he's more important than Daniel Jones. They're going to rip him to shreds for that because they know he's the most popular player. I think Shane showed a lot of growth this year as a general manager. He was presented with two really hard situations, a quarterback and the face of the franchise, the most popular player on the team. And I think he stood strong. He drew his line in the sand. He wasn't willing to go past the number. Jones met him where he was willing to go. Barkley didn't. And in the end, I think Shane showed that he's not going to get pushed around. I think that's important for a young general manager.
Something that I lost my train of thought at the end of my video today, and that's what I wanted to say actually was I like the fact that Shane didn't give in. He didn't give in to the fan base or the media or anybody that's saying Saquon's the most important player on the offense. Their offense runs through, which you're not wrong. The offense pretty much did run through Saquon. But I think that they do trust Daniel Jones a lot more, and they're going to rely on Daniel Jones more. They wouldn't have given him the contract if they didn't believe that they could rely on him more, that he took a big step forward. But I equate what Joe Schoen did to kind of like being a parent. You love your kids, but at the end of the day, you can't really be their friend. You gotta be their parent. You gotta do what's best for them. You can't always just give in to them. And as much as they love Saquon, and they try to get a deal done. It's not like they're like, no, we're not talking. You're getting the tag, whatever. We're not trying to go. They negotiated a lot. They just couldn't come to terms. But I'm glad that our GM took a stand and said, this is, like Chris said, the face of the franchise. And he said, nope, we have to do what's best for the team going forward and can't just worry about an individual player because that's how you screw a team up. This is not basketball. One player is not going – it's going to affect your team, but one player on a basketball team can win you 20 extra games. This is what happens. A guy like Michael Jordan went out. How good were they without Michael Jordan? LeBron James. There's certain players that can take it over in basketball. A quarterback, like Chris said, there's no quarterback by committee. You lose your quarterback. People say, how many games did the Giants win when Barkley was hurt? How bad did Daniel Jones look when he was hurt? Well, how many games did the Giants win when Daniel Jones?
They're 0-7 in Jones' last 7 games he's missed.
Right. So it's one way or the other. It's the fact that we were a bad team. And we're a bad team because Dave Gettleman was sticking all of his money on guys like Kenny Golladay and put all the money in one position. And it wasn't panning out. Like you said earlier, Patty, this is about having a well-balanced team. You can still get, maybe not as much production from that running back position as Saquon will give you, but you should be able to get enough. Like I said, when I started, the last 10 Super Bowl champions, the most any of those running backs have gotten paid was $2.5 million, which tells me that as important as it is, it's not as important as it was, if that makes any sense. Gut feeling, Saquon does play under the tag. He just signs it before the game in Dallas, probably doesn't play against Dallas. and then week 2 we go forward with Barkley. That's my gut feeling and final thought of it.
All right, fair enough. All right, folks, we got a whole lot else to talk about besides Saquon. We've got training camp coming up next week. So we've got to talk about some battles, some new faces, all kinds of great stuff. But first, Dog, you want to pay attention to this ad coming up. We do have to take.
I wish I would have paid attention before because I just paid.
We do have to take a break. Folks, we're going to hear from eBay Motors, one of our new sponsors. So we will be right back with Locked On Giants Live right after this. Hey, Giant fans, our partner at eBay Motors has teamed up with Locked On Fantasy Football host Vinny Iyer to bring you some of the best fantasy picks each week, all season long. Whether you're prepping for a draft or scouting the waiver wire, every week we're going to provide you with players that are guaranteed to fit on your roster. And if you're looking to make a smooth turn in fantasy football snake drafts with the last pick in the first round and the first pick in the second round, you can catch an initial spark for your roster by revving up with 2 elite NFC East wide receivers, the Cowboys' CD Lamb and the Eagles' A.J. Brown, a letter-perfect guaranteed early fit. Count on Lamb driving Dak Prescott and Dallas's new-look passing game to big numbers, and Brown revving up Jalen Hurts' downfield throwing often again in Philadelphia. And Giant fans, if you're looking for a guaranteed fit for your vehicle, you need to check out eBay Motors. With over 122 million parts and accessories for your vehicle right at your fingertips, you can make sure your ride stays running smoothly. Air filters, brakes, batteries, taillights, alternators, shocks, struts, you name it, eBay Motors has it. And they'll make sure it's the right fit for your car because eBay's guaranteed fit helps you understand exactly what parts you need for your vehicle. So go for it, switch gears, crank up the AC, and say goodbye to sweating when your ride needs a little fixing up. Because with eBay's guaranteed fit, everything you need for your vehicle is just a click away. For the parts and accessories that fit your vehicle, just look for the green check. Get the right parts, the right fit, and the right prices at ebaymotors.com. Let's ride. eBay's guaranteed fit only available to U.S. customers. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. All right, Giant fans, welcome back to Locked On Giants Live. You got Traina, Tainah, and Dog reunited, and it feels so good.
I just got to tell you, Patty, you have become like Daniel Jones when it comes to reading those ads. You have improved so much. You're like, so? You're like Daniel Jones of 2022. Like you have gotten so. I was into it. The way that you were reading it, I loved it. I absolutely loved it. And now,
you know how many takes it took me to get through that ad?
One.
No. Multiple ones. Seriously, it's so funny. I have a script that I follow, and I actually read it off of a screen. And if it's a long ad read like that one is, I try to put energy in it. But sometimes when I'm talking and I'm reading what I wrote, it's like I tend to deviate from the script and I screw it up. And I'm like, man, I got to go back again. So there have been times when I have done ad reads and I've had to do them 5 or 6 times to get them right. So
I know I've got to do.
You know what?
But luckily,
for our sponsors because they help pay the bill and support the podcast. And we're excited about eBay Motors. They're great people, and we appreciate them sponsoring all of the Locked On podcasts. And just really a cool opportunity. So
it was good.
Thank you for the compliment.
When I had Nick's ice cream last year sponsor me, he just told me to ad lib it. That made it very easy for me. I'm like,
I'm terrible with ad libbing ads. I can't do it because I always leave something important out. Yeah. I can't do it. It's weird. So I have to have a script. That's just how I work, One
of them I had a script I had to read, and the other one is just.
I mean, it's funny. I ad lib. It's like I'll write down my ideas for when I'm doing a solo show. I'll write them down on a piece of paper, and I'll ad lib off that. No problem. But ad reads because I want to get them right for the sponsor. That I struggle with. But anyway, gentlemen, we have training camp coming up, so let's turn the attention there. Year 2 under Brian Daboll and company. Just generally speaking, let's talk about some of the new faces that are brought in and how we think these new faces are going to impact this team moving forward for the better. And most importantly, have they closed the gap with Dallas and Philly?
No, not with Philly,
Not with Philly.
but they've started to. They've gotten better. In terms of like you bring up the new faces, like I'm sure we're gonna get into like the camp battles and the guys that are fighting to make the team and so on and so forth. But the new faces, I mean, the guy, I'm gonna try to go to training camp on the weekend because obviously I work a 9 to 5 now on Monday to Friday. But I'm gonna try to go. Yeah, I'm going to try to go to at least one, if not two, because I know they got 2 weekend days this year at training camp. So when I go, what I'm looking most forward to, like, hopefully they have the pads on. Last year I got gypped because I went twice. They didn't have the pads on either time.
I can give you some insight on that just real quick. And I don't mean to interrupt you.
Yeah.
But I was looking at the schedule, the practice schedule, and let me just pull it up real quick, and I'll tell you. The first 3 days, which practice starts on what I said Wednesday. So Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, no pads. Saturdays, no practice. I don't think Sunday's going to be a padded day. I think it's going to be 5 days. So I think the first padded practice, if I'm not mistaken, is going to be on Monday, the 31st. I think that's the first padded practice.
Okay.
If I have this correct.
Regardless, what I'm looking forward to, you brought up the new faces. The JMS matchup against Dex, getting those reps, right? Because he's such a big part of this team this year, right? The center, him being able to go up against our interior defensive line in training camp, I think could really help him in terms of his growth process, right? Iron sharpens iron. People say that all the time when training camp starts. We have arguably, if not the best interior defensive line, among one of the best in football. So for him to be able to go up against those guys each and every day in training camp, I think that's going to help him tremendously. Obviously, Deonte Banks, you bring up the new faces, first round pick. Love to see how he does, right? Maybe he'll be matched up against Jalen Hyatt, our 3rd round pick. Bobby Okereke, a guy I'm really excited about. Last year, we didn't have a linebacker, but I think the guy that most Giant fans are going to be most excited about in terms of the new face, Darren Waller. I'm excited to see how the Giants plan to utilize him in this offense. Are we going to get that Travis Kelce-like vibe, right? When you watch the Chiefs games, you always see these nifty plays, the way that they utilize Kelce in terms of the forward pitches behind the line of scrimmage. I'm really excited to see what they want to do with Waller, in terms of the pre-snap motion. So I think that's the guy that I think a lot of eyes are going to be on. And Kayvon, I mean, and Evan Neal too, by the way. He's such a key integral part of this team. But Kayvon Thibodeau, I cannot wait to see him step on a football field this year because a year under his belt, I think he's going to take a major leap forward. And, of course, Daniel Jones. I mean, come on. So there's so much I'm excited about. But if I had to pick one individual matchup, I love the line. JMS versus that interior defensive front.
Yeah. You mentioned John Michael Schmitz. Here's what I want to see. I want to see that offensive line better handle stunts and twists and all the little funky things that Wink Martindale likes to throw it at opposing offensive lines, because that's been a problem for the Giants for quite some time now. And I think now, once they have that unit settled, maybe the communication will be a lot better. And again, spoiler alert, I have Mark Lewinsky on tomorrow's show. That show's dropping at midnight, actually tonight. We talk about some of this, about, playing next to a rookie, the offensive line, and, some other stuff. So those of you, watching or hearing the show, check that one out. That was pretty good. I thought he was pretty good with what he was able to share. But that's a big battle that I want to see, is how is that Giant offensive line going to deal with the defensive line? Because Wink is going to test them. He's going to do it. So that's one particular thing I want to take a look at. Waller, you mentioned Waller. What's he going to do in terms of opening things up along the numbers for the receivers? And how are they going to move these guys around? I mean, we saw some pretty funky looks in the spring. Now, whether those looks make it over to the summer and then into the games, that remains to be seen. But we saw a lot of creativity. And by the way, more pre-snap motion, which we didn't see a whole lot of last year, because I suspect the offense, was year one. They were learning the system. They wanted to get everybody down and not confuse them. This is a very complicated offensive system. But this year, I think we're going to see more pre-snap motion, more deep throws. I don't think it's going to be like 10 a game, but certainly more than what we saw last year. And just more opportunities to get the ball into the hands of these playmakers who can pick up the yards after the catch. So that's some of the exciting things I want to see, what transfers over from the spring into the summer, into the season.
Another thing I just want to mention before, I'm sure Bad Dog's going to go over his, just in terms of a trait, the speed. Like, just to see the speed of this offense in camp excites me too, right? With Paris Campbell, Darius Slayton, Jalen Hyatt, because we have so much speed on this offense. So I'm excited to see that as well.
Yeah, and I mean, Kansas City has done it with speed for years.
Yeah.
Definitely, I agree with both you guys and lady. The offensive and defensive, I mean, the game is still one in the trenches. As much as they want to change rules, as much as we come into the passing league, as much as everything's changed around the trenches. But at the end of the day, the trenches win games. We need look no further than what Philadelphia did to us in the playoffs, and it still makes me sick in my stomach. But you got to tip your cap where it deserves to be tipped.
But Kansas City took care of them, dog. So
well, I enjoy that very much.
That's the only thing
Kadarius Toney likes to troll us. I'm like, bro, we were rooting for you. What is wrong with you?
Yeah, seriously.
I'll take 10 middle fingers from Kadarius Toney before I see the Eagles win another Super Bowl. I'm fine with it. I'm fine with it. I'm fine with that. But that offensive line needs to get better, and especially without Saquon, if he's, depending on the Saquon situation. But in training camp, I don't expect Saquon to be there. So, yeah, that's going to be a big thing. I want to see Daniel Jones. He still needs to hit major improvement last year, but he needs to go even farther. He got his contract, second year in the system, and, yeah, the weapons are on him. Darren Waller, when healthy, people are like, he's injured all the time. My brother-in-law is a Raider fan, loves Darren Waller, said that he is going to be so good for you guys. That's a safety blanket for a quarterback. Just look at what Jason Witten did to us for years. George Kittle, Zach Ertz, Dallas Goedert. Look at the best teams have good tight ends. Travis Kelce. The best teams have good tight ends because when the quarterback can't find a receiver, the tight end, when you have those mismatches in the middle, the tight end is a lot of times is that check down guy. Or if you have a guy like Darren Waller, he can be a big play guy as well as a check down guy. That's why I would have loved to see Saquon there, because that, when you can run the ball and you have a quarterback that can run, it freezes those linebackers for a second, and Darren Waller's wide open. Cool. So I would like to have seen the whole thing together. But the fact, like Chris just mentioned, the absolute straight-on speed that we have outside now. Giants haven't had that maybe ever in my lifetime. People said Jalen Hyatt is right up there with Tyreek Hill, right up there with Jalen Waddle, fastest receiver in the NFL with straight on speed, because he had a hamstring issue or something during the 40. He didn't give it his all, but guys in the media have said this guy he's a 4.43 flat, 4.29. That's just blazing.
We're at a 4.31, by the way.
Yeah. So in camp, right? You and I, Chris, wanted him to draft Paris Campbell the year that he came out of the draft. So to have guys like Campbell and to have guys like Waller there and Jalen Hyatt. Jalen Hyatt's going to have to work on his route running. You can coach that. You can coach that up. You can't coach straight on speed. You either have that or you don't. So what I'm excited to see, like Chris said, is the speed. And I'm excited to see this offense open up more. People got on Daniel Jones only do 15 touchdowns and this and that. But it's amazing when you talk about Jalen Hurts, you talk about some of these other quarterbacks, Lamar Jackson, they always bring in the rushing yards. Oh, look at all the rushing. Well, Daniel Jones ran for over 700 yards and had 7 rushing touchdowns, but the detractors don't want to look at that aspect of his game.
Yeah.
But I do believe, and I'm not going to put numbers on Daniel Jones this year, but like you said, Patty, you're going to see more deep balls this year. I believe they're going to open it up more now that he's more comfortable, now that he's got a year under the system, now he's got that contract behind him. He's the man. And there's going to be more pressure on him. But I think he handled pressure very well last year. So I'm excited to see the I'm always a defensive guy, but I feel like I know what our defense is. Like Chris said, Kayvon Thibodeau, he's got a chip on his shoulder. And that, I love him. I don't know what else to say. I mean, again, he is just I love him. I love his attitude. That's a defensive player. I'm hoping to see Ojulari can stay healthy this year too. That way we can have both of those guys. That'd be amazing.
Well, I'm
more excited to see the offense grow this year. I think there's a lot of room for improvement there, and I expect to see that.
Just you mentioned Azeez Ojulari staying healthy, and one of the questions that I hope to get in when Shane and Dable speak is about injuries and what they've changed. But I have a theory about this. The Giants have gone through different strength and conditioning coaches with the head coaching changes that they've had. they finally have some stability now. So last year, if you remember, Aziz came in and he was bulked up like the Incredible
Oh,
Hulk.
yeah.
I question if that was his decision or if somebody on the Giants told him that. I think it might have been his decision because just given the timing of when the coaches were hired and assembled and everything like that. So I'm wondering if now that they have stability in the coaching ranks, it may be some of these injury situations, the soft tissue stuff, the hamstrings, all that stuff. I wonder if maybe that goes down. I know a lot of people said, "Oh, the turf, the turf." What about the turf? And the players haven't really worked a whole lot on the turf, which is also in the field house. I had an opportunity to walk around on the turf, and I can tell you, right? I mean, it feels more like grass, no
Yeah.
question. But I think that all factors in the strength and conditioning and all that stuff. But that is a question that I hope to ask during the presser. I'll probably get 50 million weird looks because everybody's going to want to know about Saquon, but I don't care at this point. I'm going to ask it anyway.
You're a trailblazer, Patty, because you ask.
I'm a rebel, man.
You ask different questions. And anybody, Chris or I could go in there and go, "Oh, so what's the deal with Saquon?" We could do that, but I mentioned this before. Listen, I'm a guy that likes to work out. I have no reason to be flexible. I don't need to be flexible. In the NFL, you need to be flexible. Azeez Ojulari, strong as an ox, flexible as a piece of wood. That does not work in the NFL. It doesn't. I see these guys.
By the way, you know what I'm thinking about when we're talking about guys who are jacked? Daniel Bellinger. That you want to talk about?
Oh my God!
I'm excited for him.
How about Evan Neal?
I think a lot of us are forgetting about him. I am excited to see how the Giants are going to utilize him in that probably H-back role that I think that they kind of used Myrick in last year. But you think about this offense, how good they were in the red zone last year, top 5. Now you've got 2 tight ends that you could throw the ball to. Hopefully a healthy Wandell at some point this year with his shiftiness. All the wide receivers.
A Saquon.
Kafka's looking at his checklist. He's like, I'm going to do damage inside the 20 this year. I'm excited.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they had no problem inside the 20. It was getting to the 20.
Yeah.
If I remember correctly, because their red zone offense was pretty decent. It was certainly more improved than the year prior.
Like there was nobody that could really stretch the field. And our injury, not to mention, I mean, it's not a new face, but you had Paris Campbell, you had Jalen Hyatt, and Isaiah Hodgins was our number 1 receiver. We brought him back. And Daniel Jones, it's kind of Hodgins and Jones kind of remind me of Slayton and Jones. And like Slayton's rookie season, they had a great rapport immediately.
Yeah.
And Hodgins is a big guy. What is he, 6'5"? He was awesome for us. So you add him into the mix. There's so much more versatility on the offense this year, something we did not have last year. There just wasn't. That's why it was a lot of check down pass. Daniel Jones had the least amount of yards in the air, and the ball's only in the air 6 yards every pass, blah, 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 all these stats. Yeah, but look, he was throwing to Richie James. He was throwing to Lawrence Cager. He was throwing to, I don't even know half the time who he was throwing to. Wandell broke out. He had a great game, tears ACL. Sterling Shepard tears ACL. Darius Slayton had a nice comeback here, but he dropped 16% of the passes thrown to him. He was right at the top of the league. So he did make that one incredible catch against Minnesota. But the offense is it's so different. And I understand, like I said, I want Barkley back here as bad as anybody else. But the Giants have a lot more options this year than just turn and hand at 26. So, with Kafka, like I said, a complicated offensive system, second year in the system, more weapons to work with. Very anxious to see exactly what they're doing. Like Chris mentioned, when Wandell gets back, there's another guy that can do a lot of end around stuff or, double reverse. Or there's just a lot of things you can do. So,
you want to hear a scary stat? And I looked this up for an article that I had to write tonight. Do you guys know when the last time the Giants had a receiver go over 1,000 yards?
How do we back up?
It was Beckham, but do you know what year it was?
2016?
Nah, a little.
15?
15?
No.
14?
How to be
2018.
Oh, 2018.
It's been a long time since the Giants have had a receiver go over
he had
1,000 yards in the regular season.
Last 4 games of that year too.
Yeah.
The quad.
Yeah.
Golden Tate would have, but he missed, I think, 4 games his first year.
Now this year, hopefully they get, at least one guy over 1,000 yards. It would be nice. move the chains, but we'll just see how this plays out. But going back to your point about, changes and stuff like that, I do think we're going to see more 12 and 20, potentially 22 personnel, a lot more with the tight ends. I'm curious to see who the third tight end is going to be. I think it's going to be Cager.
They
Do
like
you
it.
agree?
They like it.
Played well at the end of last year.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, and I'm also curious to see how this receiver group takes shape. I mean, gosh, you
That to
figure
me,
if everybody stays healthy, you
yeah,
figure Slayton, Campbell, Hodgins,
yeah.
Hyatt. All right, so that's
Wandell.
4. Who am I
Wandell.
missing? Who?
Wandell.
Wandell, I think, is going to start on PUP.
Not to start the year, but I'm
I
talking.
think he's going to start on
Definitely
PUP.
another
And
one.
same thing with
Yeah,
Shep. I think they're going to start on PUP. So you got 4 guys. You figure you're keeping 7. So do you keep Colin Johnson? Do you keep Jeff Smith for
I think
special
you keep Smith.
teams?
I think you keep Smith.
Jamison Crowder, do you keep him as your slot guy?
Yeah.
And oh, by the way,
I think
Bryce
that last
Wheaton.
position, Patty, honestly, that's going to come down to special teams.
I think so too. But here's another interesting question that I'm curious to see how this plays
I
out.
like Colin Johnson a lot.
Given how much they invested in Bryce Ford Wheaton, the odds that they can slip him onto the practice squad, probably not very good if they're going to play him a lot in the preseason. So do you maybe add him to the roster initially and carry an extra receiver?
I think they're going to have a little maneuver with him, if I had to guess, because like you said, I think they guaranteed him like over 200,000, right? Which is a lot for a UDFA. I think they're going to initially like maybe put him on the 53 and then quickly shift him to the practice squad before the year starts. So
I think so too.
Yeah.
I think so too.
But I'm excited about him too. I mean, I'm excited about so many players. The wide receiver group, to me, in terms of camp battles, in terms of who's going to make this team, that to me is probably the most interesting position group going in, because even though we lack the high end, there's a lot of depth there. There's a lot of guys that do multiple things. Jamison Crowder, I think Crowder stands a really good chance to make this team because, like you said, Shep's probably going to start on the PUP. He's similar to a guy like Shep. He also brings special teams versatility. He's been a punt returner,
which Shep doesn't bring, unfortunately.
Shep also, yeah. So he's a guy I could see making this team as well. So really, and I definitely think Jeff Smith's making the team because I think we need a lot of help with the special teams, and I think that's a big reason why the New York Giants signed him to begin with. But I'm excited. I'm excited to see this wide receiver group. The slot corner, I think, is a really intriguing, battle going into camp. The guard position, I can see that getting a little bit interesting. Maybe Azudu sneaks himself into the mix. The LB2, especially after Davis got hurt.
OT3.
Yeah, yes.
That's a big one.
Yes.
That's a real big one.
So, and I think they're going to pick up a couple of free agents along the way as well. I could see them picking up
an edge rusher. Let's talk about edge rusher. I mean, same cast of characters last year.
Yeah.
We really know what Ellerson Smith can bring to the table. O'Shane Zimenez started out okay, but then he kind of teetered off a little bit. Do they have what they need at edge rusher, or are they going to manufacture a pass rush in other ways? I think they're going to manufacture it in other ways because there just wasn't a pass rusher I think that they felt they had to have. So they brought back O'Shane after he was sitting in free agency untouched. So, still a couple pieces missing on this team, but certainly a lot more holes filled.
I say it every year and it's never happened. And I don't know what our cap situation is going to look like. I believe he's still out there. He's old as dirt, but the guy gets 8 sacks every year. He's got experience in the Justin Houston.
Oh, Houston. Okay.
Justin Houston. I think he's perfect for a rotational edge, and he's got experience with Wink. I'd like the Giants to take a swing at him. If I don't know what he's
at what cost does he want? That's the problem. Yeah, like I said, the Giants have about $3.8 million in cap space.
Yeah.
I doubt a guy like that is going to take a veteran minimum deal. That's the problem, I think.
Maybe you cut Darnay Holmes for $3 million. I don't know. But
Darnay Holmes, you know what? Look, until further notice, Darnay Holmes is the incumbent. I do think, though, he's in trouble. His roster spot's in trouble because they got other guys. And if you remember in the springtime, I asked Jerome Henderson about a potential committee approach, especially now that offenses are putting all kinds of different players in the slot. You've got tight ends, small receivers, big physical brutes, offensive linemen in the, you've got all kinds of options. So does it make more sense to have a committee approach as opposed to one slot cornerback. And Henderson, to paraphrase what he said, ideally you'd like to have one, but he didn't rule out possibly having a committee.
Yeah, based on the team you're going up against. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Guys, are we comfortable with the depth at cornerback now? Because, you figure Jackson and Banks are your starters. Now behind, after them, I think you've got Aaron Robinson, who hopefully will stay on the field. Cordell Flott, obviously. They've got this Amani Awarari guy from the Lions who didn't really knock my socks off when I saw him in the spring, but you got to take that with a grain of salt since there's no hitting and stuff like that. Are we more comfortable with the defensive back depth at cornerback right now?
I don't know if I'm more comfortable with it. I think Flott's going to have a pretty decent year. I thought Flott was pretty good last year. Deonte Banks is obviously a major upgrade, talent-wise, but he's a rookie. So there are going to be growing pains there. I mean, people can't expect this guy to come out and be Darrelle Revis. He's going to get cooked. The best cornerbacks in the league get cooked. That's why as a cornerback, you have to have a short memory. So if he gets beat a couple times at the beginning of the year, people can be like, oh, he's a bust. Oh, they should have drafted this cornerback instead of – I think he's going to be fine. But I still worry about the propensity of a rookie giving up big plays because, again, you go from college to the NFL. These guys are bigger, they're stronger, they're taller, they're faster. Their route running is more crisp. They don't get to this level without it. And the defensive back is always on his toes because he has to react to what the wide receiver is doing. So the wide receiver always has the advantage. And, of course, the rules don't allow you to contact the guys either. And you certainly can't contact him or breathe on him when the ball's in the air. So I think he's going to be okay, but it wouldn't surprise me if he struggled his first couple games. If I don't want anybody to get hurt, but if they do, I really don't know how much depth we have. So, I mean, I'm a little bit better with the situation as to where we were last year, but it still needs work. We still need work in the secondary in general, I think.
I wouldn't be shocked if we take a corner in the first round next year because I don't think Adori's going to be back. So
no, I don't think so either.
Yeah, which is why I thought it was so. That's why I knew we were taking a corner in this year's draft. In the first
yeah.
round.
Oh, that was a no-brainer with the depth in this class. I mean, that was obvious. I thought.
Yeah, but in terms of my, I can't say I'm confident going into the year with our cornerbacks. Do I see potential? Yeah, I think Flott has potential. I think Aaron Robinson has potential if he can stay on the field. I've been a fan of his. I love Deonte Banks. I wanted the Giants to draft him on draft night before the draft started. I think he projects in terms of being a high-end prospect. I think he could be one of the better cornerbacks in the NFL. Like, I think he has that type of ceiling, and I think he fits our scheme really well. But for this year, like Bad Dog said, you never want to have to rely on a rookie. And God forbid if Adoree ever gets hurt and he's now our cornerback one, who steps in at the CB2. So I still definitely think that's a weakness of ours. But I see potential. I see a lot of young players that could grow this year, like our first round pick, like Flott, like Robinson. So I think it's an exciting group that it could see a lot of growth throughout the course of the year. But in terms of the depth, and it's still a major question mark. It's kind of like JMS. I'm really excited about him, but it's a major question mark. He's a rookie. So I think the strength of this defense is still up at the point of attack. It's the defensive line, and now hopefully Okereke brings some talent to that linebacker group. But the edge, if Azeez could stay healthy, could be really good, even though we lack depth there. But I think our front seven is the overall strength of this defense.
Yeah, especially Kavok, Thibodeau.
What about safety, guys? How do you see that shaking out? I mean, Nick McLeod shifting over to the safety spot. You've got Dane Belton, who I think was coming off of an injury in the spring or some kind of surgery. I forget exactly what it was. How do you see that playing out? Do you see a committee approach there? Obviously, they got Javarius Owens, who I think is going to be a sleeper to watch.
Mm-hmm.
They have, I don't know if Hawkins can play safety. I think he can play a little safety in certain packages, but they really added a lot in terms of, the defensive backfield, 3 guys.
Yeah.
But how are you feeling about that safety spot?
If McKinney is healthy, and I think he will be. There was a freak accident last year. He played a lot of the snaps his rookie season. I mean, he's out there almost every down. So that's a big help that he can pretty much stay out there the entire. And he's my favorite Giant. So I mean, I'm always going to be a little biased towards the X-Man, but I think he's solid, and I think you might see a committee. You might just they might have to feel it out to see who fits the system the best and who produces the most, and then go from there. But I don't know if anybody's gonna have that nailed down. They're gonna name a starter coming out of training camp, but that doesn't mean that couldn't change week 2.
Right.
So that will be an interesting camp battle.
And you know what? I'm not so broken up about the idea of playing committees, because now and I've said this before on the show, I think the Giants are in a better position to play matchup football. They really weren't in a good position to do that in years past. They've got more depth, and now I think they can better match up because they can move guys in and out based on what they're facing, and that can only help them, I would think.
Yeah, that's a good point. Improved depth. I think that's going to trickle down to the special teams, as I've said as well. But I think it's an open competition at the safety. I mean, you have some veterans. You have Pinnock, you have McCain, and then you got Belton, the second-year pro. Like you mentioned, you got Owens. So I think it's an open competition. I would lean towards one of the veterans getting the job out of camp, but that could definitely change over the course of the season. If I had to pick, I'd probably say McCain, but Pinnock or McCain is probably the favorite to be the starting safety opposite McKinney, but that could definitely change throughout the course of the year. And that's one of the positions definitely up for grabs in camp.
Yeah. And you mentioned Pinnock. I think Pinnock was also coming off of some kind of surgery too.
Yeah.
I think they're going to be ready. We'll find out. I want to say we should know by Monday who's going to start the year on PUP, but my guess right now, I think Wan'Dale Robinson, Shep. I could see Sean Robinson starting on PUP. Not one, and just to clarify, folks, because I get this question a lot. If they start training camp on PUP, that means they weren't able to pass the physical. So all that means is they're still going to count against the 90-man roster, and they can come off a PUP anytime, they're able to pass the physical. However, once a player passes a physical, if he gets injured, he cannot be put back on PUP. He has to go either on IR or they just have to carry him. So I get that question a lot. Obviously, during the season, if the player starts on PUP, he's got to miss the first 6 games. So a lot of people mix that up. So I just wanted to put that out there as a point of clarification, because I do think the Giants could have a potentially lengthy PUP list to start. But I don't think a lot of those guys that end up on the PUP list are going to be maybe long-term. It might just be for the first week or so. Not a big deal, I think, if that's the case. That's what I'm projecting. So we'll see. We should know that by next Monday, I would think. Guys, let me ask you this. The Giants have so much talent now. They're better stocked at certain positions. I firmly believe at some point, maybe towards the end of training camp, Shane's going to try and swing a trade, maybe get some future assets for next year, because they're not getting comp picks next year, given what they did in free agency this year. Who are some of the candidates that you think might not fit in with this team that could potentially bring some draft capital next year?
Well, that's a really good question. I think you have to look at the deepest position. So maybe a wide receiver. I don't know. Maybe you get a late round pick for one of those wide receivers that aren't going to quite make the team. That's a really tough question. Where are we deepest? We're not trading any of our interior defensive linemen. I think we're really deep there, but we're not deep.
Receiver would come to mind. I would think maybe cornerback, or defensive back, maybe.
Yeah, Darnay Holmes, since Chris mentioned, they might.
Maybe Holmes, if he's a cut candidate, if he has any interest, I could see him being a trade possibility, yes.
But receiver, I would think, maybe a Colin Johnson, perhaps.
Yeah, perhaps.
Did you see that?
Perhaps. I could see one of those back end guys. I would think it would have to be one of the younger guys if they didn't think they were going to make the team, because I don't see anybody trading for.
What about offensive line? Could you see anybody on the? I know offensive line. They've got a ton of guards. Could they maybe look to move a guard? You think?
I hope not, because I don't think we're really. I don't really trust any of our guards, so I want as many as possible. But
do you see Shane Lemieux making the roster?
No, but I don't see Shane Lemieux being worth anything on the trade market either.
True. Okay.
Maybe like a 6th round pick, maybe. But if I had to guess, a young receiver. If they felt like one of these young receivers weren't going to make the team, maybe they could get a late round pick for one of them.
Yeah, it's tough. I don't know if we really have many trade candidates, because again, I think the Giants are trying to figure out exactly what they have. But Yeah, I think that probably, because Darnay Holmes would save him some money. And not that we're incredibly deep there, but I don't think he's coming back. So trading him and getting something for him would be. But again, you're not going to get a lot for him. You might get a 6th-round pick. I just there's not a lot there. I think the Giants can trade. I think, wide receiver maybe, but there's just not a lot. I don't think we can trade anyone on our offensive line. I don't think you want to trade anybody in a defensive line. I think you want that to be what it is, especially, again, looking at the game against Philadelphia. I think that's why the Giants went out and beefed it up, because like, that's not going to happen again. So yeah, that's tough. I don't know, unless Barkley signs a tag, and then the Giants go, okay, we can't figure nothing out. There's a guy. That's the only guy. That would bring some, maybe. Who knows? I don't even know.
I guess Barkley would be the one that makes the most sense if he was causing a fit, and that would be the one that I don't think that's going to happen. But if you're saying,
I don't think so either.
Yeah,
and you still wouldn't get a lot for him, probably. You probably get a 3rd or a 4th-round pick at best.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, they slapped the tag on him, which carries 2 first-rounders as compensation. If they weren't able to get that in free agency, what makes anybody think that if they were to trade Barkley, which, by the way, I don't think they
I don't think they're going to.
will.
I don't think they would either.
You're not getting a 1st-round pick for him.
No,
I'd be stunned if you got that.
No way.
I could see us trading Barkley in season if things don't go smoothly this year. I could see that if he's playing good, kind of like the Panthers trade McCaffrey to the Niners in season. That I could see. I don't see it happening preseason.
It's going to be interesting.
No, it's not going to happen preseason, because he ain't going to sign that tag in preseason.
Yeah. Unless they say to him, all right, you know what, we're going to do a sign and trade type of deal.
Yeah.
Which, again, I don't think is going to be the case. I mean, Joe Shane indicated that they're comfortable with having him play on the tag. That's where it's headed. I mean, Barkley would have to become a really huge distraction for them to move him. I don't see that happening.
I don't see it. Barkley's not that.
That's not who he is.
I don't think we're doing it. I think he's playing this year as a Giant.
The video I made, the title, or like the thumbnail says, because I saw this on Instagram today, and again, this is just, it wasn't the media, but it's social media, and this just shows you how things can be taken out of context and twisted around. Barkley said, I could say F the Giants, but I would never do that because I'm not that type of person. So the thing I read was just Saquon Barkley says F the Giants. It doesn't.
I know.
It doesn't give the rest of what he said. It just cuts off there. So that was what prompted me to make, because I thought about doing another video on Aaron Boone, because the Yankees are just pissing me off. I don't want to get into baseball. They're pissing me off. So I thought about doing another video on that. And I'm like, but everybody's asking me about my thoughts on Saquon. Just do that. But that kind of triggered it, just to say, it's just amazing how, especially in this day and age with social media, how people can take things out of context. And
because of the headline.
Yeah, of course.
Through the headline.
Yeah. It's just so much more dangerous now because of Twitter. Because people just see a headline and they're like, everybody's attention spans are so short, they don't take the time to read.
One of my pet peeves is I tweet out my articles that I read over on Giants Country, and a lot of times the headlines ask a question, and within seconds, people will answer the question. And I'm like, read the damn article before you answer the question. It's okay to have an opinion, but read what I said and then maybe comment.
People, there's no question. People just read the title of our video and they comment on the title. Don't listen to a word we say.
Exactly.
Well, I do think we have really good listeners and great supporters. I think the majority of our listeners do listen to what we have to say. But yes, you definitely get those listeners that you can tell. They didn't
majority, but there is definitely people that are like, they comment and I'm like, you don't watch a video, because I say that 6 minutes into the
video.
Yeah. I mean, and it's unfortunate. It is clickbait, but the comments that Barkley made, you've got to put them in context. And it reminds me years ago. I always tell this story when I talk to young journalists about context. I remember Dan Reeves at the opening of summer training camp. Back in the day, we used to have a media picnic where the coach would get up and he would address the media and the guests and all that stuff. And somebody asked Dan Reeves what he thought the Giants' record would be that year. And I forget what the number was, but he said, if we stay healthy and if we do this, we have the potential to be, and he gave a really good winning record. Well, the next day I remember reading the coverage and it was like Reeves predicts the Giants will go blah, 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 but they didn't provide the rest of the context to it. And I always remembered that. That was one of my earliest lessons I learned as a journalist. You got to include the context, especially when it's when you leave out half the quote and it can be misconstrued.
Of course.
You know, so people don't do that. Unfortunately, it's all about the clicks and drives me nuts.
It does.
So, all right. So, guys, where are we most concerned about this Giant team ahead of training camp? Is it the injuries? Is it a particular position? Is it something else?
Yeah, I mean, injuries are always in the back. I think if you're a Giants fan, injuries always got to be in the back of your head because we always get banged up. And a lot of our players, if we're being honest, have an injury history. Even the additions, Paris Campbell, Darren Waller, these guys have an injury history. Saquon Barkley, even Daniel Jones has an injury history. So you got to be worried. I think that's probably my primary, worry going into the year. Can this team stay healthy? They didn't stay particularly healthy last year. Luckily, our key players stayed healthy. Daniel Jones stayed healthy. Andrew Thomas stayed healthy. Saquon Barkley stayed healthy. But Kayvon Thibodeau, for the most part, stayed healthy. He missed the beginning of the season. Dexter Lawrence stayed healthy. So our key guys stayed healthy. But, I think that's probably my biggest concern going into the year. But if you're talking about a positional group, if I had to pick one, I think it's still the offensive line as a whole, even though I'm encouraged and I think there will be growth. And I do think Evan Neal will become at least an average right tackle this year in the NFL. I think he's going to take a jump. Even so, even if he does that, which I think he will, I'm still really worried about the interior. I'm excited about JMS as a long-term prospect, but he's a rookie. So I still think, and I say it every year, but it's the truth, I still think my biggest concern going into the year is the offensive line, and it's the key of the football team, because I'm going to tell you what, if this offensive line could take that jump that we've been begging them to take for the last 7 years, and I'm not saying they got to be top 5, be 15th, be middle of the pack. If they could take that jump this year, this offense is going. I'm not saying might be. They will be a top 10 offense in the National Football League. I have no doubt about it with our play caller, but that's the key to the season for me is the offensive line. That's my biggest worry.
Yeah, I mean, injuries always, because freak injuries can happen, and football is a tough game, and you see it every year. I mean, it's not just the Giants. There's other teams that deal with it too. But yeah, you're going to have injuries. But like Chris said, the key players stayed healthy last year, and that's what led us, to making the playoffs. The key guys, the Jones, the Saquon Barkley, like you said, Kayvon Thibodeau, Andrew Thomas, like they were healthy. For me, the offensive line obviously is always a major question. I definitely think it's improved. I think Evan Neal the year under, and I don't think Evan Neal was healthy last year at all. I think once he came back from the injury, I don't think he was healthy. You mentioned Patty, you could see it. He was favoring that one side of his body, throwing his technique off. I think he improves a lot. Yeah, JMS is a rookie, and we'll see what he does. But listen, I'm not comparing him to my guy Creed Humphrey, but you saw a center could come in, and they got drafted about the same position. And whatever, Creed went 58th. I forgot where exactly. What the hell was it?
5, I want to say.
It was right around there.
Yeah.
So I think, he's gonna have some growing to do, but he's a gigantic upgrade at center. Yeah. I'm concerned about the secondary because I just feel like if we do lose one of those guys to injury, I don't know what's there. I mean, we had a rotating door of corners and safeties last year, and just that's tough. That's a tough position to begin with, and when you're down and you're moving them around and they're in and out, and I worry about that because I think our front seven is, it's up there. I definitely think it's a top 10 group. And if they stay healthy, it could be even better than that, especially with Wink's defense. But the secondary does concern me, especially because Wink is aggressive. And he does like to blitz, which leaves those corners and the safeties out on an island. So with what Wink does, that position is so important, which is another reason they went out and got Deonte Banks in the first round. So that concerns me probably a little bit more than the offensive line does.
The O-line, first off, I want to just comment on Evan Neal. I think one thing a lot of people forget about, and Willie Anderson pointed this out when I spoke to him a couple months ago, Evan Neal mostly played left tackle, I think, in his final year at Alabama. And even though he had experience playing right tackle, it's like once you get used to playing one side for rep after rep after rep, sometimes you lose a little bit of your muscle memory and you got to work to get it back. And then you throw in, now you're playing against, faster guys, stronger guys, smarter guys. It can take some build up. So I think Evan Neal's going to be okay. I think, that's a key thing. I don't know who the third offensive tackle is going to be. That's a concern for me.
Should be.
And I think the other inside linebacker spot is a big question mark for me because, look, we talk about the pass rush, but for me, the run defense, we can all agree that's got to get better.
Much
and
better.
last year, the
It
linebackers,
will, by the way, it will.
I think it will too. But last year, the linebackers and not fit, with their run fits, that was a big problem.
Yeah,
that's got to get improved.
Though, I think he'll help that out immensely.
I think to speak to Bad Dog's point about the corner play, I made a list of, and I think a lot of people when I make a list like this, they interpret it the wrong way. I listed my 10 most valuable Giants, and people take the term out of context, and they said I had Saquon Barkley 9, and that was not a disrespect towards Saquon Barkley, but a lot of people came at me like, "How is he 9?" It's in terms of most indispensable. Fourth on my list. Fourth on my list was Adoree Jackson because of what Bad Dog said. Because if he goes down, you're asking a rookie now to be the CB1, and you're putting Flott, who's never played on the outside on a consistent basis, on the CB2. So if I was not going to pick the line, I would say the cornerback because we're really thin there, and Adoree Jackson historically does have injury history. So that is a big concern for me going into the year.
Yeah, totally agree with that. And by the way, we did the top 10 most indispensable Giants as well. And I think we had Barkley, I want to say 4th, but that was a group effort. We all voted on
Jones was number 1 on both your lists.
No, I had Andrew Thomas as number 1.
Jones was 1. Thomas was 2. Dex
Thomas was number 1.
Thomas was 1 for
because if they lose Thomas right now, who's OT number 3? That was, for us, that's how we voted over at Giants Country. We had, I think, like a team of 6 people cast votes. So
I would agree with both. I think those guys are 1 and 2, hands down.
Yeah.
Look, it's all a matter of perspective. Yeah. It's all a matter of perspective for sure. So, all right, listen, everybody, we're going to take our final commercial break. A lot of you always ask me, how can I further support, Locked On Giants? Since we don't do super chats and memberships here on the Locked On Network, but this next commercial, we'll talk a little bit about how, if you wish to support the podcast further, you can. When we come back, start putting your questions into the chat box and we'll start answering some of them as we continue here on Locked On Giants Live. We'll be right back. Hey, Giant fans, with training camp about to begin and with the NFL season not too far behind, there's no better time than now to check out the Locked On Giants Subtext Community Program. This exclusive community allows me to communicate directly with participants, both in terms of group broadcasts and one-on-one texting. Members get exclusive items from me, including observations that I don't put out on my social media accounts and other goodies, such as, when available, the chance to submit questions to select special guests that appear on the Locked On Giants podcast. Details on how to sign up can be found in the show notes, and it's free to try for 14 days. And if you like it, do nothing and you'll be billed $4.99 per month after your trial period ends. There's no long-term commitments. Cancel at any time once your billing starts. And if during the trial period you decide it's not for you, just simply text STOP to opt out of the list before your 14-day trial period ends, and you'll owe nothing. I can't think of a better way to connect on a regular basis with Locked On Giants listeners, and I hope you'll give the Subtext community a try. Again, you can find details in the show notes. So check it out, sign up, and I hope to see you on the Locked On Giants Subtext community. All right, everybody, welcome back to Locked On Giants Live. And just real quick on that Subtext community, with the Mark Lewinsky interview that I did, I actually sent out a broadcast to those on the community. And I said, okay, guys, what pressing questions would you like for me to present to Mark Lewinsky? And that's something that I plan to do with all the planned interviews that I'm going to be doing at training camp. And I just actually sent in a whole list of guys that I want to talk to. I sent it to the Giants
Can I
this
ask my
afternoon.
question, Patty? Can I ask my question?
Sure.
Does he plan to block this year?
What's that?
I was mean. I said, does he plan to block this year?
Was he playing box? But anyway, yeah. So that's just one of the many things that I do with the subtext community subscribers, and I do text back. I've got some people who text me every day, several times a day. So as time permits, I do text you back. So it's really a cool way. And if you're looking, like I said, if you're looking to support the podcast, in addition to the views, which so many of you generously give, my everydayers and newcomers and whatnot, that's a great way to do it. And I hope you'll check it out. Details in the show notes. And also it's on the screen here. Join subtext.com/LockedOnNYGiants. So thank you everybody for your support. All right, let's see what we have in terms of questions here. I've got to scroll back because I saw a few. Okay. Papa Guzzo has a question.
Papa Guzzo.
Yeah, we got to get Papa Guzzo in here. Papa Guzzo is always on the program. Thank you, Papa Guzzo, for checking in. Who will be the starting wide receivers?
All right.
If we're talking 11 personnel, I think right now you're probably Campbell, Slayton, and Hodgins, I would think.
Yep, those three. Unless one goes healthy, which he's not going to be. Those three. I don't even think it's a debate. I think it's those three.
Yeah. So it's going to be those three. I think we can all agree on that.
Yeah.
Davey Anonymous, he missed the beginning. Do we think Saquon plays against Dallas in week 1? Yes. Now, does he take a full workload? That depends.
Yeah.
So there's two different segments here we've got to talk about here. Depending on when Saquon reports, and I do think he will report, I don't think he's going to leave $10 million on the table. But if he comes in the day before, then, he could theoretically not be ready and not play, but it really depends. But I think all things being equal, I could see Saquon being on the field if he comes in like right after the Jets preseason game. But if he signs that tag the night before or whatever, then I don't think he plays against Dallas. He'll get a check, but he won't play against Dallas. That's how I could see Saquon maybe handling this if he's going to stage a protest.
Yeah, I don't think he's playing week 1. I really don't. I think he's signing the night before, and I hope I'm wrong. I mean, I know he plays. Didn't Joe Morris miss week 1 of 86, Patty? You would remember that.
Oh, gosh.
I know Joe Morris held out in 86, and I don't think he played
so.
the first against Dallas. He had 21 touchdowns in 1985, and he held out in 86. Emmitt Smith held out in 93, the first 2 games of the season, and then got it done. But I hope I'm wrong, but with the way this has gone down, I just have a feeling he's just going to say, I'll sign it. And now if he signs that tag, it doesn't play week 1, but he's there. He still gets paid.
He gets paid because once he signs it, that 10.1 locked in, fully guaranteed.
There you go. So he'd get a raise because he'd be getting 10.1.
Right. And again, while I think he will be available for week 1, I could see him waiting to like the Friday of that first week to sign the tag, at which point he won't be ready.
That's my guess.
That's what I think might happen. I'm hoping, though, I'm wrong, and I'm hoping he comes in the week before, because Saquon at heart is a competitor. He takes his role as a leader in that locker room very seriously. So I'd like to think that he won't, play games with that. But who knows? If he listens to his representatives or his family, maybe somebody says, you know what, screw the Giants. Why don't you do that? This way you get a paycheck. You don't have to fake an injury, and this is the best way to handle it.
I think he's going
to play. I could see that.
I think he's going to play week 1. I think he will sign maybe a week before, but I don't think he's going to get a full allotment of touches.
No, I don't think so either.
Yeah, I think he'll get like 8 or 10 carries. I don't think he'll get a full allotment. But
I agree.
Hopefully he does play week 1. And he goes into the locker room like Bobby Boucher did at halftime of the championship game. That's what then nobody expects him to be there, and then he goes in there, and they pound Dallas into the turf.
Yeah.
I want to beat Dallas's ass. So we need Saquon. We're going to do that.
Yes, definitely. Okay. Kelly Fisher asked, when do you think Hyatt starts games?
When we have some injuries. I don't think
I agree.
slot at the start. He's going to replace Slayton long term. That's what I think. He's like the clear replacement for Darius Slayton, in my opinion. But because they're just similar in terms of skill set, only Hyatt's faster. And hopefully has better hands. No disrespect to Slayton. He was great for the Giants last year. But that's what I see him. But yeah, unless we have injuries, which we probably will, we always do. I don't see him I think he'll have a role regardless, but I don't think he'll be a starter unless we have injuries.
Right. And they don't have to rush him, because look, work on his route running and all that stuff, the route tree, get him up to speed, and then his role will grow. I really think it will. And there's no rush right now. So they can work him in, here and there and whatnot. James Vegas wants to know, do you think we'll find our long-term right guard in the future? They've got candidates, James, Marcus McCathan is one. I'm just trying to think. They've got Jack Anderson's another guy that I know they like. So this year it's going to be Glowinski. Beyond that, to be determined. I don't think, when you say long-term of the future, I think that's still up in the air, to be determined, because I don't know if Glowinski will be back here next year. He is under contract, but I think the guaranteed money dries up after this year. So,
yeah, I mean, obviously we hope Azuda is one of the, whether it's the left or the right, we hope he's one of them, but no guarantees there. And yeah, we're probably going to need another guard at some point, whether, it be in free agency or the draft.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Jordan Samiti, how do you think Kafka can grow as a play caller this upcoming year? And what should he focus on with all these new weapons he has?
Down the field.
Deep passing. Absolutely. Look, again, last year, it was the first year of the system. Every player I talked to said that this offensive system is complicated. So if you look, and and spoiler alert, I talked with Glowinski about this and the speed and how much faster it's going to be this year. Again, that show is airing tonight at midnight, or just after midnight. But I think you're going to look to see them play faster. I equate this to last year was level 1. This year's going to be level 2. So they're going to be able to take it up a notch. Deep passing is definitely going to be part of it. But you're also going to see a lot more plays where, maybe guys, the short passing or the intermediate passing, get them in the hands of the guys who could pick up the yards after the catch, and just mix that in with the deep passing game, I think.
Yeah, to me, it all goes back to the line, like I said earlier.
Play action too.
Yes, but if the line is even average, I have full confidence that Kafka is going to be able to get creative and have plays down the field. I think last year they felt the line was limited. They had limited wide receivers in terms of ability to get open. This year they have a little bit more explosion. If this offensive line improves, I don't really worry about Kafka. I think he's going to be I think he's a good play caller. Obviously, Dable's heavily involved in the offense as well. I think we're going to have guys running open if we could block. I have full confidence in this offensive coaching staff.
Yeah, listen, in the red zone, a major improvement in the red zone. Last year, somewhere we struggled. Yeah, getting there was a struggle, but when we got there, we cashed in. And that's what you wanted, the green zone, as Tom Coughlin used to call it. I think, again, you're going to see this offense open up a lot more. It's not going to be as conservative. I think that, again, if Dable and Kafka didn't have confidence in Daniel Jones, they wouldn't have given him the contract to begin with. But they also wouldn't have built a lot around him. They took a major swing at the offense in the draft and in free agency, adding Campbell, trading for Waller, drafting Jalen Hyatt. So, bringing back Slayton and drafting a JMS. So, yeah, I think you're going to see a much more intuitive and inventive offense. I think you're going to see more creative play calling. And, like you mentioned earlier, Patty, I think you're going to see more balls down the field. Two guys like Jalen Hyatt's, they might just come in there and go, they might just send him in there like when he was at Tennessee. You know what? Just stand over there and just run as fast as you can towards the end.
Just go.
Go. Yeah. And if you're open, we'll throw it to you. I mean, maybe Jalen Hyatt can just run by somebody, but if nothing else, if you just bring him out there and he stretches the field, it can open up underneath for Darren Waller. I think Kafka's probably sitting there going, What can I do?
Right.
So yeah, I expect a lot more creative offense from Kafka this year for sure.
Yeah, definitely. All right. A couple people asked about Shane Lemieux. Davey Anonymous says, is Lemieux healthy? Yes, to my knowledge, he is. And where would he fit in at the guard position, especially for right guard? Ben Bredesen's another guy that I haven't really mentioned. Ben Bredesen, I think, is in the final year of his deal. So right now, yeah, that interior, the guard position, the left guard, they've got to settle that. I think ideally they would like for Azudu to take that job and be the future there. How that affects right guard after this year, to be determined.
It's kind of like that safety position opposite McKinney. I think you're going to have a starter named out of training camp, but no guarantee he'll be the starter in week 2.
Well, I don't want to see rotation, because when you see rotation on the offensive line, it means they don't know who the heck they want to go with.
I know, and that's what I mean.
I really don't want to see that.
Right. I don't know if there's a clear-cut guy to really okay, he's our Thomas and your bookends, and JMS is the center. So you have those. You're going to give them a playoff now and again, but they're your guys. But yeah, I think you might have to do some mixing in that just to see who is the best.
If I had to guess, guys, I think it'll start with the 2 veterans. I think it'll be Glowinski and Bredesen to start the year. But I do think there will become a point in the season where Azudu does take one of those spots. That's what I think will happen.
Yeah,
maybe it'll be Glowinski's. I don't know, but that's what I think will happen.
And also, if there are injuries, that could throw a monkey wrench into the plans. But yeah, that interior offensive line. I mean, John Michael Schmitz. They could say, well, they want. There's a competition. He's going to be the starter. I think we all know that.
The thing with Lemieux that brings a little bit more value to the depth of this line is he does have center versatility.
Yeah, but not a whole lot.
Not a whole lot, but he could at least step in a pinch.
I mean, and don't forget, you also have JC Hassenauer. A lot of people forget about Hassenauer, who, by the way, I'm not so sure if he makes the team, but maybe he does.
That's a guy that could potentially be traded.
That's a guy, exactly.
Center experience.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah.
So we'll see. All right, Chris D asked, can Azudu or Bredesen play right guard? I think Bredesen can play right guard, but I think Azudu is more of a left guard. But look, Bobby Johnson cross trains his guys anyway, so I don't want to sit here and say no, he can't play this position, because I know Bobby Johnson is cross training guys. So we'll have to see. But here's another possibility, and I'll just throw this out here just for the heck of it. I don't think it's going to happen, but Matt Parrott as a tackle to me wasn't cutting it. Could he maybe function better as a guard, even though he's too big to be a guard?
Yeah, he's big.
I mean, I think it would be a problem with the pad level, but
I mean,
maybe
it would
work better in a phone booth. I don't know.
Work for Flowers.
Exactly.
Yeah, I screamed for years that they should try Flowers at right guard, and they never did. And then he went to Washington, and they got paid by Miami, so it did work. I mean, I don't think you have anything to lose. You try him out there at training camp. I mean, that's what training camp is for.
Well, also in the spring too, and I'm just and trying to remember, because the offensive line always worked in the corner, away from where we could see, or way back in the backfield. And I don't recall seeing Parrott working at guard, but that doesn't mean that they won't, try it. I mean, I think Parrott isn't a lock to make the roster. I think they're going to go in a different direction at OT3, but maybe they don't give up on the guy. I don't know. I really don't know. Tyree Phillips, amazing guy. Just mentioned Tyree Phillips. He can play guard as well.
I think he's going to be the swing tackle if I had to guess.
Yeah. So
he played pretty well.
Cunningham's another guy they got who could play OT3. I mean, they've got options, and there's just so much to sort out. And right now, if you were to ask me to sort it out, I could probably give you the starting unit, but the depth behind them, it's a toss up for me.
There, yeah.
Yeah, it's a toss up for me for sure. So, all right. Papa Gusso's back with another question. Can the Giants get 50 sacks this year with their current D-line, or do they need to get another edge? All right, Papa Gusso, you're talking about two different positions. So let's just talk about the pass rush in general. Can it get 50 sacks?
Absolutely. Right. Last year we had, I think so.
Last year, I think we had
44 44. I'm gonna look it up right
41,
now.
I want to say. Was it 41?
It was 41. You're right. My mistake. So 9 more sacks. Yeah. I mean, I think Kayvon's going to definitely have more sacks than he had last year.
Aziz, if Aziz stays healthy.
I think our secondary will be at least slightly better, which should only help the pass rush. We got more depth on the defensive line. And while a guy like Ashawn Robinson isn't going to provide many sacks, what he will do is he's going to provide rest for guys like Dexter Lawrence and guys like Leonard Williams, who missed time last year. They're going to have better ability to be able to close out games. So, yes, not only
and also you're going to see blitzes. You're going to see
Yeah.
more exotic blitzes coming from that defensive sector because they do have guys back there who can blitz.
Yeah.
So
So not only do I think they can, I think they will. If they don't hit 50, I think they'll be close. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. So, yeah, I do think 50 sacks is not totally out of the question. But again, the disclaimer, if they stay healthy, which as we
if
know,
they're healthy, there's no reason to think that they can't get 50 sacks.
I'm going to give you the key number, though. We cannot have 6 interceptions as a team this year.
Yeah,
that needs to go dramatically up this year.
Yes.
Dramatically.
Yeah.
Yes, totally agree. Absolutely. That was a big problem last year. Guys got their hands on balls, but they dropped it. You know, I haven't found a stat that showed how many dropped interceptions there were. I'm sure Pro Football Focus has it, but there were a lot. So we cannot have that again.
I think what's going to improve that number more than anything is going to be our improved run defense. Last year, we couldn't stop the run. We might have the worst run defense in football last year.
It's bad.
As that improves, you're forcing them to be in, Bad Dog and me talk about it all the time, in situations where they're more predictable for the defense, where it's 3rd and 7, 3rd and 8, that makes it a lot harder to throw the ball. That should lend itself to more picks. So if the run defense gets better, which we're all projecting they will, I think that's going to lend itself to more turnovers for the defense.
So that run defense can't be worse.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. All right. Jonathan Christ asked, do you see us adding another linebacker or pass rusher such as Deion Jones or Yannick Ngakoue? I think they're going to stand pat with the edge rusher unless there's an injury. Because, again, Wink is going to come out with different ways to manufacture a pass rush. And don't forget, you talk about a pass rush, Dexter and Leo can give you a push up front, which should help. And I mentioned there's going to be probably more blitzes coming in from the secondary than we saw last year. I could potentially see another inside linebacker added because, all right, Beavers is coming off the injury. Carter Coughlin, I think he's more special teams at this point. Cam Brown, special teams. And by the way, I don't see both of them making the roster. Yeah. Who else do they have? They have Troy Brown.
McFadden.
And McFadden. They have a lot of inexperience there. So we have to see how it plays out. But I would think of the 2 spots, inside linebacker, to me, would probably make the most sense to bring a second guy in, pending on how these guys do in the summer. I don't think, I think right now the coaches are, okay, let's wait and see before we panic and say, oh my God, we've got to bring in another inside linebacker because we've got guys that don't have experience. You got to start and get experience somewhere. Yeah. So that's what I see happening there.
Beavers too, by the way. I don't know if you mentioned him.
Yeah, I did mention Beavers.
Oh, you did? Okay. I think McFadden has the leg up if I had to guess. Because I remember when we drafted him, I thought he'd fit it. From what I read up on him, he's a good blitzing inside linebacker. It just seems like that's the type of guy that Wink would want in this defense. I think he has the leg up in terms of being the favorite going to camp as the LB2. Plus, I heard a lot of good write-ups on him, I think, in OTAs. So I think he's got a good chance to, if I had to guess, to have the inside track at the LB2 right now.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's see.
I'm excited to see what Darian Beavers does.
I mean, he looked like he was going to be a solid downhill type of player for him.
When we did the draft that year, we were watching his tape because we didn't know anything about Darian Beavers. We don't study the draft that much to get all the way down there. But when we watch his tape, we're like, oh my God, we love this guy. He's big and he just the motor. Again, that's just something you don't teach is the heart. And when he was in training camp, he was all over the field before he got hurt. So those are my type of guys. Those are your lunch pail guys that just go. Those are the John Madden guys. So the John Madden always loved those guys that never quit. They played through the whistle and after the whistle. And Darian Beavers, to me, from the little that I saw of him, is that type of guy. So I'm excited for him. I think he could have an impact, and hope so.
And I'm gonna
Yeah.
tell you what, and Patty got a better look than I did in training camp, so maybe she could speak further on this than me. I want to say I went to 3 training camp practices last year before obviously Beavers got hurt. And yeah, like Bad Dog said, when we watched the highlights, we saw like more of that traditional linebacker, that downhill linebacker, hard hitter. He was much more athletic than I thought he was going to be. When I saw him dropping back in coverage, they played him up at the line of scrimmage, like off the edge at times in practice. Like there was a clear plan for him to be much more versatile than I envisioned him being. He really stood out to me in the practices last year before he got hurt, Beavers.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I mean, but again, when you're coming off that ACL, and by the way, somebody asked if he's healthy, he should be good to go. I don't think he's going to be one of the guys that starts on PUP. I also don't think he's going to be green lighted to do everything right away because there's time. There's time. So, we'll see how that works out. But I do think Beavers, he was working in the spring. So I have no reason to believe he's going to start on PUP this summer, but we'll see. All right. Mark B asks, with all these weapons, will there still be quarterback keepers? I guess you mean design runs.
Yeah.
I think there will be from the RPO zone read type things. Will there be as many?
Probably not.
I hope, look, I get nervous when Daniel Jones runs. I'm not going to lie, but I also recognize that his legs are an asset. So I do think they will keep that as part of the offensive, program, if you will. But I'd like to see maybe, more. I'd like to see them be more selective. How many rushes did Daniel have last year? I forget. Did he have over 100?
He had a
Must
lot.
have been around 100. He was
I don't
over.
think I'd like to see him run 100 times plus this season.
He had 120 carries last year.
Yeah, I don't think I'd want to see him run
playoffs.
that often. Me
Didn't he have
personally.
like 15 carries in the Vikings game in the playoffs too? He had something insane, right?
Yeah,
That
it
game.
was crazy.
Yeah, I don't want to see that.
Yeah.
But what was it against Indianapolis? He had 100 yards rushing and whatever it was, or
Yeah, it was the Colts game. It was a Colts game.
yeah, I forgot.
when necessary, fine, but not, we have no running game, so Daniel's got to be no. I don't want to see that. Be selective, and I do think they're going to be selective more so this year because now they've got more guys that can carry the offense.
But and I agree with you, Patty. I'm with you. I don't want him to take as many hits as he did, but you can't take that out of his game completely because that's a big part of.
No, I agree.
What
I
makes
agree,
him
and I'm not.
successful.
And I'm not saying take it out of the game, but I'm saying be a little bit more selective. Just like you're going to be selective with with when you take your deep shots down the field. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. But
yeah,
I definitely think it's still going to be a part of this offense because Daniel Jones's legs is one of the best weapons that we have.
Absolutely.
In this offense. So they're definitely not going to take it away. I'd like them, like you said, to scale it back a bit. Like in an ideal world, would I like them to have almost 800 rushing yards? But probably more than that if you include the playoffs last year. No, I'd like that number to be around 500, maybe up the pass yards to over 4,000. Like that would be ideal for me. But you can't take that away because that's going to not just that's also going to help his passing game. Having that throw his legs, having the defense have to spy him, honor him, that's going to create opportunities in the passing game. So it's still definitely going to be a part of this offense.
Absolutely. And it should be, but just I don't want to see him running over 100 times during the season. I do think, about 500 rushing yards sounds about right. I can live with that, but be selective. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. And, to his credit, Daniel did a better job with ball security, but I thought there were times when he took a few unnecessary shots.
Yeah.
Which made me hold my breath.
I agree. I'm like, damn, go down. He'll run and we'll be, streaming the game and go down, slide.
Yeah, exactly. So I'd be a little bit concerned with that, to be honest with you. All right, let me see. Dylan Johnson says, is there a timeline on Wan'Dale? My gut feeling is that he will start training camp on PUP. And again, I think the Giants are going to tell us who's going to start on PUP. I think by Monday we should know that for sure. If he starts on PUP, I'm just trying to think, was he the one that I saw him running around? Yeah, I did. I saw him running. I think it was the last day of the mini camp, the mandatory mini camp. He was running and cutting and doing all kinds of stuff. And he was looking pretty good. But see, here's the thing you guys got to remember. even though a player might start on PUP, the first 5 or 6 days is the acclimation period. There's going to be no hitting or anything anyhow. It's not really, I want to say, real football.
Right.
So even if a guy spends the first week of camp on PUP, it is not the end of the world.
You know what I can't wait for, Patty?
What?
The training camp is my favorite thing. It happened last year. When Daniel Jones has a bad practice because Wink knows exactly what the offense is going to do. I cannot wait for Twitter to blow up and say Daniel Jones is the worst. Let's replace him with Tyrod Taylor. The overreaction to training camp makes me laugh, and I already know it's coming. I can't wait for that.
And listen, don't think for a second that Wink's not going to test that defense or
Of
that
course.
offense.
Yeah.
We mentioned it earlier in the show. That offensive line has had struggles with stunts and twists and all kinds of fancy stuff. And if you don't think that Wink's going to throw everything but the kitchen, including the kitchen sink, think again, because it's going to be a good test for the communication of that offensive line, especially now that you have a rookie center in there who you are, hoping will be your starter. So you might as well start now and just see how they handle it and use that as your teaching points, because you don't think Dallas is going to throw stunts and twists and all kinds of fancy stuff at the Giants?
Eagles.
The Eagles, the 49ers, every opponent's going to do it. So start it now and see how it holds up. And, look, you're right. People do overreact with what's reported out of training camp, but guys, take it with a grain of salt. Just because the offense looks crappy, according to reports, doesn't mean that the defense looks so good. It could be, somewhere in the middle.
That's what practice is for. You want to try to work on
Exactly. Exactly. So, just don't go to the ledge just yet, just because you read, oh my God, Daniel Jones threw 10 interceptions in a practice.
No, he'll be fine. I can't wait for DJ this year. You know what was refreshing about this podcast?
What?
We didn't talk about Daniel Jones really once. Last year, that's all we talked about. And that's not, I'm not saying that I don't enjoy talking about that, but the chat, always drives the conversation in these podcasts.
That's because of the contract.
It's interesting you said that, Chris, because I do have a question from somebody on Daniel Jones I was going to put up next.
Let me hear it.
I mean, this is an easy one, actually. Do you think DJ will get preseason reps? But, yes, I do.
He means preseason games, I'm assuming.
Yeah, right, so preseason game reps. I do think he will. Will he get as many? No, not as many as last year.
Yeah,
you got to build up the timing and whatnot with the new receivers.
I'll be surprised if he plays the first or last game. I think the second game he plays a quarter and maybe a series in the second quarter. That's it.
Yeah, I think he'll have maybe 3 or 4 drives throughout the totality of preseason games. I don't think he's going to get a ton of reps, but he'll get some reps.
Yeah, absolutely.
He might, maybe the first game he does play the first series, and that's it.
Yeah,
that I could see. I can see.
Don't forget they're scrimmaging against the Lions, so Dable counts that as kind of work. So maybe the first game you don't even see Daniel Jones and some of the starters. That's a possibility, because that's the joint practices will kind of take some of that, So maybe you wait and you see more of Daniel in the second preseason game against the Panthers.
Yeah.
So that's what I think is going to happen. I mean, that's just
last year I thought it was important for him to get some reps because it was a new offense.
It was a new system. Yep.
This year, limited. Save it for the regular season. We're going to need you, Daniel. I trust Daniel this year. Being more acclimated to the offense, the growth that he showed last year. Do I want to see him get a little bit of time? Yeah, because he's got new receivers. You want him to build a little bit of a rapport with Darren Waller in a game situation.
And John Michael Schmidt. I mean, you want him to get a rapport with him too. So
yeah.
Absolutely.
That's a big thing. You want the center and quarterback to be on the same page.
Sure.
JMS gonna have to learn Daniel Jones's cadence, and John Michael Schmidt is a weird snap, doesn't he? He does something.
The dead ball snap.
Right. Yeah. So they got to get used to it.
It's not an issue, by the way.
You got to get familiar with one another, because they're pretty familiar in the game. You got it right up in there, so you got to. They got to get.
By the way, Dog, I told Chris this at the start of the program. Your draft reaction, that compilation video. Every time I need a laugh, I just tune into that with you going, wee. was like,
yeah.
oh my God, I just pulled out of my
We
chair.
couldn't have done it any better. We got the 3 guys that we wanted.
I
Yeah.
know. That
It's not
was
even we're
awesome.
getting- I thought 2 or 3, I would have been happy. We got all 3 of them. So
If
I
we
thought
would
that
have
was
got
awesome.
JMS, if we got JMS in the first round, I would have been happy. We got him back into the second, and then you get Hyatt, who most thought was going early second, mid second. Like it was a dream scenario. Deontay Banks probably shouldn't have dropped as far as he. Like it was a dream scenario. It's perfect.
yeah, I think
Yeah.
Gonzalez dropping all the way to 17th or wherever he went. That helped.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That helped. Well, I was surprised Emmanuel Forbes went before Christian Gonzalez because Forbes was the first guy off, right? 16 or wherever.
I think
Washington picked.
so.
I
And
wanna
then
say
the Patriots, I think the next pick took Christian Gonzalez.
Right.
I want to say there was another. I'm forgetting now. I think there was one.
Well, who was a really good corner went the first 5? I forgot who that was.
Oh,
Yeah, why is the name
I
escaping?
forgot. I'm not
Oh,
forgetting.
the dude from Illinois. The dude from Illinois.
Can't
I
remember.
liked him too a lot. Somebody's in the chat.
Witherspoon?
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah,
Yeah.
he went early.
He went. We knew he wasn't going to the Giants.
Yeah,
We just figured Witherspoon. I thought Christian Gonzalez was going to go a lot earlier than he did. So it was nice to see he get pushed back. And we were wondering if the Giants going to, do whatever they got to do. But they did, yeah. Well,
Yeah. Yeah. All right, real quick, guys, if you're asking questions and we're not getting to them, just repeat them because we're getting a lot of questions flowing in. So I might be missing stuff. I'm trying not to miss them, but if you do have a pressing question, just repeat it and I'll see it. So I just want to mention that to the audience here. All right, Jonathan Chris asks, will Paris Campbell be used in the slot or outside or both? And also, will he be the slot starter? Jonathan, I think as far as the starter, it's going to vary. And I do think Campbell is they're going to mix and match. I don't think you're on this offense. We talk about how Wink Martindale has a positionless defense.
Mhm.
And I think you're going to see with the skill position players, especially the receivers, they're going to be sort of positionless in that this guy isn't necessarily going to be an X or this guy isn't necessarily going to be, the slot guy. So it's going to be a matter of matchups. That's what the Giants were striving to do. And I think that's what we're going to see a lot of.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think he's going to play both. I think he'll probably play more slot than on the outside until Wan'Dale is back and healthy and ready to get his full allotment in terms of the way that they want to utilize him. Then maybe Campbell will be a little bit more on the outside. But I think he'll be both. I think he's versatile. I think he fits the scheme the best. I've said it pretty consistently. If I'm excluding the tight end, if I had to pick one wide receiver that has the best year this year as a Giant, I think it's him. I think he fits the scheme really well. And if he could stay healthy, I think he's due for a breakout season. I'm not saying he's going to be a Pro Bowler, but I think he's going to have a very nice year this year for the Giants if he could stay healthy.
Yeah, I think he'll move around too. I don't think they'll pigeonhole him to one position. And again, he can do a lot of different things. His speed is a wonderful thing. But I think you get in the same thing. When Wan'Dale gets healthy, same thing. I mean, I think Wan'Dale is a slot receiver, but it doesn't mean you can't line him up outside. Yeah. I mean, we saw, Sterling Shepard can do both. Victor Cruz did both. It's definitely something. Again, I think we're very versed on offense. And I think depending on the package and the other wide receivers out there, Paris Campbell definitely could get some snaps both outside and in the slot. And I'll be shocked if he doesn't, to be honest with you.
Right. All right. This is a good question, I think, and we haven't really talked about it, but it's important. Who will return punts and kicks? This is from Joe. Now, kickoffs, that new kickoff rule, I don't know if it really matters, if I'm being honest with you, because I still, when we talked to Thomas McGahee about the new kickoff rule, which, by the way, you could tell he hates, as do a lot of.
What is that again? I forgot what that is.
If the kickoff lands, I think anywhere inside the 25, and you call for a fair catch, the ball is automatically spotted at the 25. So it's sort of like a touchback type deal.
Just like that, I think
it's a terrible rule. I hate it. They're trying it out on a 1-year basis, but I have a feeling they're going to keep
kind of like they tried out the challenging the pass interference on a 1-year basis. Hell of that.
Yeah.
I'm
going to be honest.
I'm still curious to see how special teams coordinators work around it, because now you're taking away the squib. You're taking away so much out of the game with strategy. So kickoff returner, I think at that point you just want somebody who can field the ball and not muff it. Punt returner to me is a bigger question mark as to and that's going to be a more important role. Crowder can do it. I know Darnay Holmes can do it. Hyatt
It
could
better not
probably
be
do
Adore Jackson. It better not be Adore Jackson.
yeah.
Oh man, we screamed our heads off about that before he even got hurt.
Dude, I was screaming loudest.
Yeah.
I guarantee you. I'm like, what are you doing?
I think it'll be Crowder. If he makes the team, I think it'll be Crowder.
I think it's going to be Crowder too.
Yeah.
Somebody mentioned Khalil Pimpleton. Pimpleton's got he's had a little bit of a dropsies problem from what I remember. So if he can clean that up, maybe he's an option. I don't know, but yeah, that to me is a big question mark, along with who's going to be the gunners, because the gunner play last year on special teams was lousy.
Mr. Smith. Jeff Smith. I think he's going to be a gunner.
Jeff Smith, do you keep Cam Brown or Carter Coughlin? I don't think, again, you're going to keep both. So which of those two? I'd like to see Cam Brown back as a gunner. I think they took him off that duty last year. Never understood why, because, he's got the size, the speed, and the ability. And I thought when he played the role, he played it halfway decent. But gunner play was a big, big problem last year with punt coverage.
Awful last year, our gunner.
It was terrible.
Especially our punt coverage in general. The punter and the punt coverage was awful last year.
Awful. And, Jamie Gillen, yes, he was inconsistent.
Yeah.
But just think about if he had had a little better gunner coverage, would his numbers have been as bad as they were?
No, it wouldn't have been. It would have been better. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, that's another role that obviously we want to see. All right. The Silky Legend's been asking this one. Which new player, either by trade or draft, is each of you excited to see? I know we talked about Waller being one. Waller for me, for sure. I'd like to see Eric Gray, what he can do. I mean, my glasses are going to be on him, especially with Saquon likely to hold out of camp. Obviously, I want to see how John Michael Schmitz does. Deontay Banks, I want to see. What I liked about Banks in the spring was, even though there was no contact, he did such a good job tracking the ball and staying with the receiver. That was very encouraging to see.
Yeah, I'm excited about all those guys. And long term, they're super important. I think Deontay Banks and JMS are like so important to the future of this team, obviously. But the guy that I'm most excited about in terms of the newcomers, probably Waller. But I'm going to give you another answer that you didn't say. Bobby Okereke. Our linebacking core was so bad last year, and I watched this guy, his highlights. I don't know. Maybe I don't know what an elite linebacker is because our linebackers have been so bad. But when I watch him, he is so much better than what we've had.
Antonio Pierce, just remember that.
Yeah, similar to him. He's got the same number, right? So I'm really excited to see Bobby Okereke in a Giants uniform and what he could bring to this linebacking core.
By the way, Bobby Okereke is going to be one of the players I've requested for a sit down. So my subtexters will get an opportunity to send in questions for it, that I'll probably be able to pose there, but I'm hoping to have him on the pod, the training camp interview, because he's got a really interesting story that I happened to come across when I was researching and getting my stuff together. So he's somebody I hope to talk to.
For me, I mean, it's tough. I mean, I really like what we did in the draft. I'm interested to see what all of them do. Honestly, Jalen Hyatt, just like I said, I don't remember the last. I mean, Beckham was, not comparing Jalen Hyatt to Beckham. Beckham was an explosive guy, but he was a 4.4 guy. I mean, he was fast enough if he got by you that you weren't going to catch him. Kind of like Victor Cruz. Victor Cruz wasn't incredibly fast, but if he got by you, he was hard to get from behind. But Jalen Hyatt just poses a threat that I don't ever remember the Giants really having, which is just an absolute guy with blazing speed. Another guy, though, I'm interested to see is Eric Gray. Being a Sooner fan, Eric Gray, I felt like was an absolute steal in the 5th round. He had a really good year, and he is definitely a complementary back to Saquon. Eric Gray is a guy that will get caught from behind. He is not a blazing fast guy. He's a little bit more elusive in the open field than people would give him credit for, but he is a downhill runner. He is a guy you want to take some. Again, man, I don't know what's going on with Saquon Barkley, but there's no question in my mind the Giants could easily hurt him too, because it is market value. Because when they get inside the 5, they could say, "Well, we're not going to give you the pounding. We're going to give it to the rookie because he's bigger. He runs downhill more than Barkley does. He's a powerful runner. That might be Eric Gray, what he does, he might be the guy inside the 3-yard line. He might be the guy on 3rd and 1, 3rd and 2. So I think that Eric Gray could have an integral role, especially in those short downs or in that red zone area inside the 5, inside the 10. So it'll be interesting to see how they use him. And again, being a Sooner guy, I'm anxious to see. Usually the Giants don't draft him, which is why I loved Sterling Shepard right away. I was so happy when they got Sterling Shepard. It just sucks that Chip could never stay healthy. But yeah, I mean, I'm interested to see how all the rookies do, because I felt like we had the first 4 picks were fantastic. I don't know much about the other guys that we took, but I felt like the first 4 were awesome. And
Right.
I'm excited to see what they do. And of course, who isn't excited about Darren Waller?
Yeah, definitely.
The threat at tight end. We haven't had that since what, Martellus Bennett, where we had like an actual threat. I mean, Evan Ingram had a great Jacksonville, but he was a threat to both teams. Because we throw it, he'd be wide open, he'd take the ball up in the air, get intercepted. I think Waller is more of a complete tight end.
Waller is what we hoped Evan Ingram was going to become.
Right.
That's what Waller is, in my opinion.
And that is what Evan Ingram has become.
Yeah.
Just for us, unfortunately.
Yeah. And that goes along with a question somebody asked about how the running backs will play out. I think it's going to be a committee approach. Maybe, Breida is the de facto starter, would take one out. Eric Gray might be the 3rd down blocker. I mean, I that's still to be determined. So I know that was a question I saw pop up by a couple of people on the chat here. So I'm glad, we were able to tie that in. All right. Less 3D. What player do you think will be the biggest surprise? Ooh, that's a tough one. Ooh, got to think about that for a second. Biggest surprise. I guess if you're talking in terms of breakout, I'm gonna go. I'm gonna. You know what? I'll throw caution to the wind here and just say Evan Neal. I think he's going to be much more improved.
That's a good one. I agree with you on that. I think he will be.
I'm going to go with Evan Neal. I think
I like it.
They need him to be improved. I know he's been working his tail off. I'll say him. I'll say on the defensive side, Cordell Flott is the guy I think who's going to surprise.
That was the guy I was going to say, Patty.
Yeah, I think Flott.
I'm going to go. I'm going to go with an unsexy name. Like everybody's. I would say Paris Campbell, but that's like the easy one. Everybody's saying
that's the easy one. You got to think outside the box.
I'm going to go with a veteran. That I think a lot of people are forgetting about how good of a football player he is, and with the improvements on the defense, I think he could thrive, especially with the added depth on the D-line. I think Leonard Williams is going to have a big year this year for the New York.
Bounce back year. Yep.
Bounce back year. Big Leo.
And they're going to reduce his snap count because the last 2 years, he and Dexter, over 80% of the snaps. Who does that on the defensive line?
Yeah.
I mean, Dexter is 25 years old, and they had to give him a veteran rest day. That tells you how much they had to rely on him because they didn't have depth behind him. So, yeah, I agree with you.
He played with an injured neck a lot of the second half of the season on top of it. Flott on defense for me, I think Flott could take a big step forward. I really do. I felt like he was pretty good in situations for us last year. And I think with a year under his belt, I think he's going to have a more integral role in the defense this year. I do think that he could have, I don't know, say a breakout year, but I think you'll notice Cordell Flott's play on the field. And offensively, yeah, I'm going to be biased. I'm going to say Eric Gray. I think Eric Gray is going to have a lot of big moments for the Giants. I really do believe that the Giants could utilize him. I think he could be the touchdown stealer. I honestly do. Because, listen, man, I'm not saying the Giants should do this intentionally to screw Saquon Barkley's market value because touchdowns obviously matter to a running back. I think one of the biggest knocks on Tiki Barber is, he only had 55 rushing touchdowns. The hell with the fact that the guy had 10,500 yards in 7 years and had 3,500 yards the last 2 years rushing, led the league in yards from scrimmage in 2005. And had over 2,000 yards from scrimmage. I don't know how many times. He had over 5,000. Put Tiki Barber in the Hall of Fame. Okay. Tiki's done. But
and I'm
throwing in, so why not?
I'm going to throw a name I should have said, by the way, Kayvon Thibodeau. I think Kayvon Thibodeau this year is going to, like last year we saw glimpses This year, I think you're going to see him do it almost every week. Like, I think he's going to be a monster.
Will he be better than Micah Parsons this year?
I hope so. But
Will he get to that level?
I'll give you another sneaky, good candidate who could have a huge year. Bellinger.
I like it.
Everybody's talking about Waller, rightfully so, but don't sleep on Bellinger.
Yeah, Dustin, the backup tight end, gets a lot of them touchdowns and when they do the little, the third and short and they play action pass. And you're thinking Waller, and then there's, and Bellinger was very good inside the red zone for us.
And if he hadn't gotten hurt with the
I like the way he was playing last year, and that was a freak injury.
And I like the versatility. I mean, I think it was mentioned he could take some fullback snaps, be that
next now. So if there's a fight, Bellinger's got this. So I'm not gonna.
I know you're impressed with being a workout warrior. I know you're impressed.
Bellinger was in the gym with me this offseason. We were hitting the Iron Paradise, so I taught him a few things that I know. That guy's a beast. That guy's a beast.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, he looks like a beast. And I'm reluctant to shake his hand because I think he might crush mine, and I'm like, I don't want my hand crushed. I need my hands to write, obviously. Okay, let's see. We have this is a good one. This is from Duran Osman. Does Kayvon
with one of the best icons, by the way. That's Lawrence Taylor from Tecmo Super Bowl.
Yeah. Yes.
Which is the greatest football game of all time. The hell of Madden.
Yes. No question. Okay. Does Kayvon have
old guy? Old people on the screen.
All right. Does Kayvon have a 2011 JPP level performance jump? Prediction: KT will block a field goal. All right. I don't know about that, but does he take a JPP level performance jump? I think so.
JPP could have won Defensive Player of the Year his second year. He had like 17 sacks, was one of the 3 most important players on that Super Bowl team. So I don't want to set those kind of expectations, but I think he's going to have a
performance jump.
He's going to have a big jump. I think Kayvon is, especially with the improvements around him, you figure he bulked up more. He's more experienced in the NFL. I would be surprised if he doesn't at least get 9 or 10 sacks. I think he's going to have
I was going to say, do you see double-digit sacks this year?
I'm leaning he will have double-digit sacks, but I'm not going to say JPP like jump. That's
okay. So you don't think in year 2, maybe year 3, maybe you could see that for him, but double-digit sacks for sure.
I think he could do that. Yes.
Yes, and I'll tell you, if Aziz can stay on the field and get double-digit sacks,
we barely saw those two.
I mean, last year, the outside linebackers, if I'm not mistaken, they combined for 13.5 sacks. Compare that to what the Eagles, one guy on the Eagles did. I think Hassan Reddick had 17 or something.
We had a chance to sign, I don't know how many times, and get him and just said, yeah.
Yeah. So
he's from Jersey. I mean, what are we doing there?
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm expecting big things for Thibodeau. I like the kid's attitude. Spoiler alert, he's another one I've requested for a sit down. So nice. I went for, I have some, if they come to fruition, I've got some really good stuff planned that I hopefully will be able to put here on the podcast. I think a lot of you guys will like what I'm cooking up. Got my little notebook all filled up with ideas and questions and concepts and all kinds of little things. So you'll want to make sure you follow along, not only here, but also on Giants Country. So, all right, let me see if we have any other questions. Again, if you asked a question and we didn't get to it, pop it back in the box because we're getting a lot of stuff and I'm trying to keep up with it on the side here. I even put my glasses on so I could see them. And we'll go ahead and we'll make sure we get them answered before we wrap it up. I'm just looking to see if we have anything else. Yeah, I know somebody did ask what would be the biggest disappointment for this Giant team. I don't remember who asked it, but let me put it to you guys. What would really disappoint you this year? Would it be the number of wins? Would it be a performance? What do you think is just going to make you go, geez, that didn't go the way I thought?
Barkley holding out the season. That'd be the biggest disappointment to me. I don't think that's going to happen.
I'll say this for me. I mean, every year it's about you want to win the Super Bowl as a fan, but realistically speaking, for me, what shows me growth this year as a team is getting closer in the division. Not even necessarily beating the Eagles, but getting closer, not getting walloped. If they don't show if they don't show that they're closing the gap, at least on the Cowboys and the Eagles to a certain extent, that would be disappointing for me. Like if the Cowboys just completely maul us at the line of scrimmage like they did last year, Jones is pressured 25 times week 1 like he was when we played the Cowboys week 2 last year. That would be my biggest disappointment because I do think we've started to close the gap on the Cowboys in particular. So I'll say that.
Yeah, I'm going to tell you what I hope to see because look, progress is never linear.
Yeah.
But what I want to see and what I will consider a significant improvement, winning more games in the division.
Yeah.
That's where it starts for me.
Absolutely.
There's going to be games that, do I think they're going to beat the 49ers right now? Probably not.
No.
What do I think is going to happen? Will they beat the Eagles twice? I don't think so.
I
want to see them, ideally, I want to see them sweep Washington. Yeah. I'd like to see them sweep Dallas. I don't think that's totally out of the question, but I have a feeling, it's probably more realistic to expect them to split.
Yeah.
And I'd like to see them split against the Eagles and finish with a winning.
I'm happy if they finish 3-3 in the division, however they do it. I think we have
I would be happy with that because they haven't done well winning in the division, and that's where it starts.
Yeah. For me,
the other stuff is great, and they're going to need the other wins, obviously. So don't get me wrong, but it's got to start in the division.
Yeah,
because this is a tough division. This is where the litmus test is, I think, for this Giants team. And if they can't stand toe to toe with their division opponents, then we better rethink this whole situation.
And that's what this offseason was about. When you look at it, like, where do we need to improve to get better from within the division? It was in the interior defensive line, stopping the run, getting pressure up the middle, and being able to block, right? Because we got manhandled in the trenches both times we played the Cowboys. And I'm not going to count the last week of the season because it was the backups, but both times we played the Eagles, the first game in the regular season and the playoff game. So to me, that's what you want to see. You want to see growth in the trenches, and I think we will. I think we will see that. We're still not as good as the Eagles in that department. Are we more comparable with the Cowboys? I think we are. I do. So I'm excited. I'm excited to see the growth on the line against those two teams.
Yeah, for sure. All right.
Definitely got to win games in the division. I mean, last year, I think was a surprise to many that we were able to, get into the postseason, be a winning team. I thought we'd be better than we were the year before, but I didn't think we'd be 9-7-1, get to the postseason and win a postseason game. But I think the Giants
1-4-1 in the division, right? Am I correct?
So you have to start winning division games. I think that is the next step for this team, is beating the Cowboys, is beating the Eagles. You got to find a way. If not even beating the Eagles, you got to compete with the Eagles. Okay, because I don't think we close it. Philadelphia, I hate it. I throw up in my mouth every time I have to compliment that team, but they're good. I mean, you don't win the NFC Championship. Well, they kind of did win it by a fluke, didn't they? I mean, who was San Francisco? I'm not even going to give them credit. They're not as good as San Francisco, and we play them too. But still, they're a lot better than we are. Yeah. But Dallas, I think that we could beat Dallas. I just do. I feel like we played them tough both games. And the game again on Thanksgiving, we were up in that game at halftime. And this is with a short week, and everybody was hurt. Everybody was hurt that week. Like, we had nobody that week. Wasn't that the week Barkley came off or was that was a short week, right? That was the game. Wasn't that the game right after Houston, or was that before the bye?
I think so.
No.
Or was it Seattle game? When the hell did we?
Seattle was before the bye.
Okay.
I think Houston was the first game coming out of the bye.
And then we played Dallas, right? I think it was a short week. Barkley had a
short week.
And everybody, we had
the Lions maybe, but
Gary Jackson got hurt.
Oh, the Lions. Yeah, the Lions were in there too, weren't they?
Yeah, they were in that mix.
Yeah.
But that Cowboy game, like, everybody was hurt, and we were up 13-6 at halftime in that game. So, we have to find a way to beat. We got to beat Dallas. We have to be better in this division. We have to be at least 500. We have to be 500 in this division this year. You got to go from 1-4-1 to 3-3.
I've seen I'm just going to throw it out there because I've seen 8 people ask, what are my expectations for Daniel Jones? My expectations for Daniel Jones is by the end of the year, not just Giants fans, NFL fans are going to say he's a top 10 quarterback. That's my expectation for Daniel Jones. I think he is going to be much more respected by year's end when he gets another year with Brian Dable, with more help in this offense. I'm not going to put a statistical threshold on it.
Yeah.
Stats are so inconclusive in terms of the performance of a player, because anybody that watched Daniel Jones last year would tell you he was so much better than his rookie year. But if you just look at the stats, you would say, well, had he played 16 games his rookie season, he would have thrown 30 touchdowns. But he wasn't near the quarterback. So stats are completely misleading. So I'm not going to put a statistical threshold on it. But what I will tell you is at year's end, Daniel Jones is going to be getting a lot more respect throughout the NFL. I think he's going to have a very good year for the New York Giants.
Yes, to my favorite line, there's two things. Statistics tell half the story, and statistics are for fantasy football and losers. When you win games, nobody really cares about player stats because the win is the most important thing. But when a player loses, you're like, well, look at his stats. Look at his stats. Listen, fantasy football is the main cog. It's the driving force in NFL ratings. And there's no question about it. Because I'll sit there and, New Orleans is playing Carolina on a Thursday. Do I give a damn about the Saints and the Panthers playing? No. What I give a damn about is, what is Chris Olave going to get my fantasy team? So I watch it. So I don't – again, Daniel Jones, to me, what I expect is, like Chris said, maybe not everybody's calling him a top 10 quarterback, but he's going to get a lot more respect around the league and from these analysts that say Barkley is the driving force and it's not Daniel Jones and they overpaid Daniel Jones. By year's end, I don't think you're going to hear people say Daniel Jones got overpaid. And I think you're going to see Daniel Jones be a much more aggressive quarterback. Remember, the play calling was limited. And it's not because some people say, well, that's because they had no trust in Daniel Jones. There's part of that. They both had to learn to trust one another. But again, what in the hell was he throwing to last year? Who was he throwing to?
Yeah.
Nobody. There was a million guys that came in and out of there. So many injuries all over the place. He played games without Evan Neal for a while. The wide receiver core, Daniel Bellinger. I mean, the list goes on and on and on and on. Now you got guys with a lot of speed. You got a guy like Darren Waller. You got a center in the draft. And it's a second year under this system. And they're going to let Daniel Jones have more leeway. And I think they're going to be more aggressive in their play calling. Are they going to be Kansas City? No. Are they going to put up 30 points a game? No. But I think they're going to put up a lot more than 22 points a game, whatever they put up last year. I think they could be in the middle of the pack as far as scoring points this year. That's kind of my expectation for Daniel Jones.
Yeah. And I've seen a lot of people in the chat. I've said this too. It's completely different sports. I've said it on Twitter several times. I think when by the end of the year, not that, Patty, I don't know how big of a basketball fan you are, but I think the Jalen Brunson signing, when the Knicks made it, was widely criticized around the league because the Knicks made the signing based off what they projected him to be, not what he had been. They saw a player that kind of wasn't getting the opportunity in Dallas with Luka Doncic, and the Knicks gave him top-tier money at the point guard position, and then he was an MVP caliber player last year with the New York Knicks. I think it's going to be a very similar thing with Daniel Jones. I think the Giants paid Daniel Jones off what they project him to be, not what he's been. And in my opinion, a lot of times that's the better way to spend your money rather than paying a guy for what he's been. What is he going to be, right? Because that's where you're going to get your money's worth. I think they're projecting him to take a big leap this year, and I think he's going to.
I think they also don't – it's not just that they have confidence that Daniel Jones will take the next step. They have confidence in themselves as coaches to make him that quarterback, because what he was before they got there was a quarterback under Joe Judge, Pat Shurmur, and with Dave Gettleman, making the meals in the kitchen. Okay, so giving the recipes and missing a few ingredients or whatever you want to say. I don't know what that analogy is. I should know this. I'm Italian. I like to cook. I should know the analogy, but I don't. But what he did in the past has no you can't predict what he's going to do in the future. Those numbers are just – that's all statistics are. It's just what happened. But you can't guarantee that, guys get a track record. But I don't think Daniel Jones is really – listen, John Mara himself said they did everything they could to screw this kid up. That came right from the guy that owns the team. So I think with that admission, he said we're changing things around. We're going to bring in these two 21st century guys. We're going to bring in a 21st century analytical front office. And we're going to let these guys do their thing. And we saw Daniel Jones. I don't care what anybody says about his statistics. If anybody is being the biggest Daniel Jones hater, if you're being honest with yourselves, there's no way you can say he did not take a gigantic step forward from his first 4 years in the league to what he did last year.
Sure.
And he should take another step forward this year. If he doesn't, then it'll be disappointing. But I think he will. I think he's got enough experience. Confidence goes a long way. He led us to, 4 game-winning touchdown drives, game-tying touchdown drive against Minnesota before we lost on a 61-yard field goal. He's going to be a lot better, and I'm excited to see it.
By the way, guys, just not to create a panic here, but somebody mentioned this in the chat here. Saquon has removed reference to the Giants from his social media accounts. So take that for what it's worth.
And they'll be back.
He'll be back. It'll be back. I think so. But I'm looking at
This
I've
is
got
all
his
you do.
Instagram account here. I looked at his Twitter accounts, and he has, I don't want to say he's totally scrubbed the Giants from it, because I do see pictures from the Giants, but he's made some changes to his, that to me, again, emotions are still raw, I think, on Saquon's part. And I could see also, just looking at his Twitter account, he's probably, I think he's a little pissed off that his comments that he made on that podcast about, F the Giants, were taken out of context. So I could see that he's definitely
I did the video today because I wanted to, again, I mean, I don't know how many people, I think I mentioned that maybe 3 minutes into the video. So who knows how many people got 3 minutes into the video. That was a lot of the point of my video, was how things can be taken into context. And because, like you said, Patty, that gets the clicks, it gets the headlines, but tell the whole story.
Yeah. I'm kind of, I shouldn't say this, but I think that graphic was from Sports Illustrated, which is part of, Fan Nation is part of that. Folks, when I wrote it up for Fan Nation, for Giants Country, I put the entire context in there because it's so important. And I get it. Clickbait, all that stuff. I get it. I don't like it, but I could see where, Saquon would be ticked off. Hopefully he doesn't hold that against me this season. I don't think he will, but who knows?
I'll be honest. There's no reason for him to have it's all he can do right now. He's
right. And technically he's not under contract, so he's not with a team. So,
right.
I don't know that I would get, I don't think I would get too concerned about
like that going into the game against Dallas, then maybe you have a little concern.
I've said it before. I think Saquon right now, his ego is bruised, his feelings are hurt. I get that. He's disappointed, I totally get it. But just, that's why I think him staying away for the next several weeks, I think that's going to help. They say time heals all wounds. But the more I think about it, the more I'm wondering if he doesn't sign that tag with like 2 or 3 days to go before the Dallas game. And now, you're not going to be ready, so you can't play. That's what I think will happen with him.
Mm-hmm.
So
I hope not, because I don't. I'm rooting for
I
him.
think that's.
And I think it's going to be bad if he does that. But
you know what?
I'm going to tell you what, and it's not.
It beats faking an injury, though.
Yeah,
it beats faking an injury.
I understand where he's coming from. Like I said, I sympathize with Barkley. I do think he got a raw deal. I don't blame the Giants for it, though. They used their leverage. He's going to be villainized if he does not play in that Dallas game and he holds out. Whether and I will understand it. But if the Giants lose that game and Giants and fans feel they would have won that game had Barkley played, it's going to get ugly. It is going to get ugly fast.
And on the flip side, if they win the game, then Barkley, the gamble didn't pay off.
Yeah.
But, that's something to keep an eye on, is when that tag gets signed, because it will get signed. I firmly believe that. I don't think Saquon is going to take the route of faking injuries, because that's just, beneath that. That's dishonest.
Yeah.
But signing the tag, he has control over that. And that's the best way if he want to really make a point about, how valuable you think you are.
Well, Barkley's a high character guy. So
I think so too.
I don't think he would feign injury at all.
No.
But like I said, it will not surprise me if he signs the Friday before the game and doesn't play against Dallas. That's kind of what I'm expecting. If he plays against Dallas, that'd be great, even if it is just 8 to 10 carries. I'm just not expecting him to be there week 1. But whenever he does sign this tag, because you're not doing. Listen, I don't care how. Listen, I don't care how bad your feelings hurt. $10 million is going to make anybody feel a little bit better, I would imagine. But what you're doing, it's an audition for the future. I mean, you go in there, people know you're disgruntled, but you go in there and give it your all, and you say, I'll put this aside. I'm a football player, man, and I'm going to do what I love to do, money aside. And even though I don't like what this team did to me, I'm going to give it my all for them. That's really going to speak to every other team in the league. Hey, listen, this guy not only he's explosive guy, one of the best talents in the league. Now look at what he did. It could help him. All he's going to do is hurt himself if he sits this season out. There's no question about that. Or if he feigns injury, if he's just I can't see that happening.
He's not feigning injuries,
right? Or like being a distraction. Like
Yeah.
I can't see him. Well, this is the one problem though. I can't see him being a distraction because it's not the way he is. But I can see the media. No offense, Patty.
No, if none
The
taken.
media is tough, and I can see after every game them grilling him about something.
I mean, we have short memories as fans. Last year, Barkley was a joy to watch in the press conferences. The year before, when things were, he was as depressed as I've ever seen a player during those interviews. So I could see this could be a really interesting season with Saquon.
For him.
Yeah,
I could see it be mentally. It could wear on him a lot.
Yeah,
and he might have to just not talk to the media. I don't know. It's again gut feeling. 98% sure he's going to play for the Giants in 2023.
Oh, absolutely. But week one is.
I don't think he's going to be there.
I thought he would be, but the more I think about it, the more, because I think back to when Strahan was. Do you remember in 2007 how Strahan was? Oh, I might retire.
Of course, because he don't want
to. Strahan's son came back into camp. I want to say 2 days before.
He played in game one.
He did play. Yeah, he did play, but it's almost like the same situation though. Again, with Barkley, if he really wants to make a point, I'm not signing that tag until Friday night after the week of practice is done and the game plan is put in place.
Listen, I would not blame him because you know why, Patty? That's the only leverage Saquon Barkley has. That's it. That is his.
And it could backfire, Bad Dog, because what if Gray goes out there and looks really good and the Giants win?
But like I said, they're 0-8 with Barkley in the lineup against Dallas.
In there.
So
it would be great. That'd be great for us if that happened, because then people could say, "Well, there you." Then Joe Shane and Brandon, they'd be vindicated. Well, that's exactly why they didn't give him that long-term deal. So that'd be best case scenario for us. Even if Eric Gray went out there and had 123 yards and 2 touchdowns and the Giants won, he would not be taking Saquon Barkley's spot.
No.
Yeah. But it would be great for that'd be bad for Barkley.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying.
I don't think that'd happen.
I
especially
hope it doesn't come to that, but that's certainly something that you've got to put in the back of your mind there.
But that's Barkley's only leverage. He has no other leverage.
Exactly. Unless the Giants maybe say, okay, we'll give you a little bit more than the 10.1 million and we promise not to tag you next year. That I could see being, maybe that.
But to be honest with you, Patty,
but I don't think the Giants will do that because they want to see what do they have now in camp. To make any concessions now, the Giants aren't going to do that. Shane's not stupid enough to do that.
Right.
So, and also it will help Barkley if, God forbid there are injuries at the running back position, but we've got to see how it kind of plays out. There's a lot of uncertainty. That's why I just don't see this getting resolved anytime soon. And I want to answer this question from Davey Anonymous regarding, because it's a cap question. And that is, if Barkley doesn't sign, do the Giants get 10 million back on the cap? If Barkley does not sign for the regular season and sits out the entire season, that money does get credited back, I believe. I'm pretty sure it does. So, right now they're not getting it back. Obviously, it's coming out of the cap. I'll double check on that, Davey, but I'm pretty sure the money does come back because it now becomes an unsigned contract. And even if Barkley holds out to like week 10, which I think is the last week he can conceivably sign and play for 2023, the Giants would still get 10 weeks worth of prorated amount or prorated credit back on their cap. So there, that would be helping the Giants out. That's why I don't think Barkley will do that. I think the more I think about it, it makes sense if he's going to play, if he's going to play hardball, sign the tag like on the Friday or Saturday before the Dallas game. And now you know that you're not going to be ready to play, and you're forcing the team's hand to just not play it. So that's how I see it playing now.
This is why I wanted them to get a deal done that made sense for both sides. But
I think we all wanted it done. And you know what? There was a period of time when I was optimistic it would get done, but I don't know where it broke down. I really don't. What were his agents telling him?
Yeah.
I said right all along, Barkley sees himself in one light and the Giants see him in another light. And that's where I think there was some disconnect there. That also in the fact that he was advised to turn down 2 pretty decent offers from what I understand. And now, the one I think that was presented to him before not training camp, but free agency was as high as 14 mil. And now you just cost yourself about 4 mil or so. So I think I don't want to be overly critical of his agent, but I think she misread it.
You should be. I think
she misread it.
Yeah.
And I think she probably thought that the Giants, this is, it's like with anything with negotiations. Like if I'm negotiating with you, Chris, and I say, okay, Chris, I want to hire you, but I'm only going to give you $5 an hour and you want, say, $10 an hour. And I say, Chris, and in my mind, I say, okay, the highest I can go is $7 an hour.
$5 an hour. What is this, 1960?
I'm just using this as an example. You're worth more than $5 an hour, as far as I'm concerned.
I'm messing with you.
I'm just saying. The point is, if I have a hard line in the sand, and I say, okay, I cannot, under any circumstances, go over $7 an hour, and you say, well, Pat, I want $9 an hour. Guess what? The negotiations are going to break down, and we're not going to have a deal. So I think that's what happened with Shane. I think he drew a line in the sand. He doesn't want to, because look, that's how the Giants got into cap hell to begin with, by outbidding and overbidding and bidding against themselves. And with the franchise tag on Barkley, they were technically bidding against themselves, if you think about it.
At the end of the day, in my opinion, it's not his fault. But the reason Barkley didn't get his big contract, running backs, when you look at it, the elite running backs, they get paid after their third year. Christian McCaffrey got paid after his third year. Alvin Kamara got paid after his third year, because that's when running backs are more valuable. They're 24. Yep. They're 25. They're three or 4 years away from that proverbial cliff at 28, 29 years old when running backs fall off. Barkley lost his opportunity to strike it rich when he got hurt and he tore his ACL. Had he never torn his ACL, he would have gotten that McCaffrey contract after his third. I agree. That's just the way of the world. It didn't break his way. But for his agent not to anticipate when the Giants had that as an option, like he would have so much more power after year 3 because they can't tag you. He could threaten to hold out. He's got value, kind of like Zeke did. You can't do it then. But when the Giants had the tag in their back pocket, for his agent not to anticipate that, are you kidding me? If he was offered $14 million a year and 23, 24 guaranteed, we don't know if that's the case. For him to turn that down before free agency started, knowing that the Giants had to sign Daniel Jones, a horrible job by his agent. Awful.
Yeah. I think, and that's, look, somebody put in the chat, they said, at the end of the day, doesn't Barkley have final say? Absolutely. And he did tell his agents, get it done. Just get the deal done.
Yeah.
And he said that in that interview with the Money Matters podcast. Yeah. But we don't know what they were telling him. How involved actually was Barkley in the negotiations? To me, it sounded like he wasn't as hands-on as he could have been. And, that's why some people say, well, that's why I pay an agent. You got to be a little bit more proactive. Daniel was proactive.
The agent gets a cut of that too, so maybe the agent.
Yeah, but not that much, dog. I think the max is 3%. They capped it.
They got more than that.
No. They capped it. There's a rule in the NFL CBA.
Okay.
Agents only get up to 3%. And if there's multiple agents involved, as was the case here, they would have had to split that 50-50.
Gotcha.
So
Listen, I work for the state, so I've dealt with union crap. And I always say, listen, when you're in the union, you're always going to get something, but your employer is always going to take more. That's the
sure.
way the employee always gets the shaft. But that's what you're in a union in football, and that's kind of what happens. The player doesn't always get with it because at the end of the day, like I said, if I don't like our contract, well, I can be replaced.
Right.
I mean, I'm not a football player, but I'm just saying, Barkley, you may not be able to replace Barkley with somebody as good as Barkley, but he's going to be replaced at some point.
And,
You can
and
put
by the
another back there. He's expendable. You're not gonna lose your whole team because Barkley's not there. The Giants aren't gonna fold him up. It was a nice run, guys, but we have after almost 100 years of football, we have to shut it down because Barkley didn't come back here.
And by the way, I see this in the group chat. Everybody's saying, "Oh my God, Andrew Thomas is rep by Barkley's agent." He's not. Barkley's rep by Kim Miali of Rock Nation. Wait a minute.
Andrew Thomas, Joe Shane's going to throw the checkbook at him.
But wait a minute. Just to clarify this, guys, because I looked this up. Andrew Thomas is rep by John Thornton of Rock Nation. Yeah. Same agency, different individual. John Thornton, for those who don't remember, former NFL player. Yeah. So little different situation there. I think Aziz, if I'm not mistaken, I'd have to double check this. I think Aziz is also rep by Rock Nation, but I'm pretty sure Miali's not his agent. So just
if I'm not mistaken, I remember reading like Miali specializes in running backs, right?
She's had did she have Fournette and Gurley? I can't remember.
Which tells you, right? Which tells you she's not a very good agent because the running back market's plummeting. So maybe she should pick a different position to specialize in.
Yeah.
But
I mean,
but I don't know. I just wish it worked out better because I love Saquon, but it is what it is. Live and learn.
But the bottom line at the end of the day is the players got to take a little bit more of an active role in it. I know Daniel did. I had heard Daniel was a little bit more active in his. I know Dexter was a little bit more active in it.
Yeah.
I don't know how involved Saquon was. Reading between the lines, and I don't want to be unfair to him. I don't know if he was as involved, because a lot of times it's like, oh, my agent's handling it. My agent's handling it. Dude, this is your financial future too. You got to get involved.
Yeah.
And again, I don't know how much. So I don't want to, flame him. I don't want to be unfair to him, but you got to get involved. I mean, would you, Chris? I mean, even if it was a family friend or somebody you knew forever, wouldn't you want to be involved?
Well, yeah. If you came to me,
wouldn't you want to be involved?
If you came to me and you offered me $5 an hour, and my agent said, "Yeah, I would get involved." Okay, Patty.
Yeah. I wouldn't offer you $5 an hour. I think you're worth a heck of a lot more.
No. Yeah, I think. I mean, I don't know. I don't know all the specifics. I don't want to paint Saquon in a bad light. He was probably trying to stay loyal to his agent, but yeah, I mean, Daniel Jones was proactive, and Saquon never fired her, by the way. I saw people in the chat saying that she was replaced.
You know what? He didn't. But here's the thing, guys. He went outside of Rock Nation and brought in his marketing guys.
Additional representation.
That's not done very often. I can't think of an instance where a player did that, had two different agencies repping him in contract. So I don't know. Did he maybe do that to save face so as not to embarrass Kim and Rock Nation? It's a possibility. Did he feel that, okay, maybe, this guy, Ed, I think his name is Ed Perry, maybe he could, bring a different perspective in? I mean, the Giants weren't starting from scratch with the negotiations. They basically were like, okay, we're not going to, just because you brought in a new rep, doesn't mean we're going to start all over again. Yeah. So I wonder, and we'll probably never know. Only Saquon will know for sure. But to me, that's pretty telling when you go outside the agency and say, oh, I'm going to bring in somebody else to see if maybe we can push this to the finish line.
Yeah. Jones made the change, and they got it done probably because of that. But hey, it is what it is. It's water under the bridge. I just hope he plays.
I hope so
it is.
I mean, I just hope for Saquon's sake that he finds peace in the situation. Right now, again, the feelings are raw. I get it. He's going to take some time away from the team, continue to working out. But I do think at some point he's going to be there when it counts. week 1, will it be? That's going to be one of the big question marks heading into training camp. So we'll have to see how that plays out.
Yeah, we'll see.
So, all right, guys and gals, we've gone just almost 3 hours, which I think is a new world record for the show. But there was just
we had a lot of catching up to do. We had a lot of catching up to do.
We had a lot of catching up to do, and it was great.
By the way, Bad Dog, are you free tomorrow night? We'll do the show.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
We're gonna do that. I don't even know which channel it's on. There too. I don't remember. Is it mine or yours? I don't even remember.
We'll figure it out.
We'll figure it out. But we're gonna be live tomorrow. Bad Dog and me. Come on by, hang out with us too. But I had an absolute blast coming on here tonight.
Absolutely, we always have. It was so good to get the band back together, and hopefully we'll be able to do. Now that training camp is kicking in, we can do. Maybe not every week during the summer, but certainly check in and. And I know, Dog, you'll probably be at
Giants football content again.
Yeah. I mean, Doug, I know you'll probably be at some practices. Tainah, I know you're going to
try.
No,
I live so far away from there. I won't be. I never go to the practice. I'm like 3.5 hours.
You got to come down, man. You got to come down. Maybe you come down for a weekend or something. But anyway,
that'd actually be fun to go down for a weekend. That's actually not a bad idea.
Maybe at some point we midway through the summer we reconvene, and then before you know it, the season will be here, and I'm sure there'll be a lot to talk about as we go through. So anyway, I want to thank y'all for coming in and spending the nearly 3 hours with us. I know it was a long show for some of you, but I see a lot of you who were here at the start of the show are still here. So thank you so much. Thank you for tuning in to the Locked On Giants podcast. Tomorrow, again, my special guest is Mark Lewinsky, offensive lineman. That show's dropping just after midnight. Check it out. Mark's got a football camp, so we talked a little bit about that. But we spent most of the show talking about the O-line, the year 2. And, I thought it was pretty good, a pretty good discussion. So check that out. And then next week, I've got, I think, one more opposing team preview we have to do, and that's the Dolphins. That'll be on Monday. And then training camp, baby, reporting day, Tuesday. No media access. First media access is Wednesday. And as long as there's a practice, I'll bring you a show, even if it's just a quickie. So
I might tune in. I am very intrigued by that matchup this year, because you want to talk about getting tested on the secondary. What Bad Dog is most worried about. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Tyree.
And that was, and that's a point that Alan Pupar of All Dolphins brought up.
Yeah.
I said, what's the biggest strength of this Dolphins team that you think might cause headaches for the Giants? And he said, the receivers versus the Giants secondary.
When you look at our schedule this year, Patty, oh my God, like you name a top 10 wide receiver, we play them. Devontae Adams, the Eagles duo, Washington's got great wide receivers. Dallas has some good wide, like the 49ers, Debo and Ayuk. Like we play the best wide receivers in the sport this year. So Deontay Banks, he's going to be thrown right into the fire.
Yeah. Don't forget we got Terry McLaurin a couple times.
CeeDee Lamb,
right.
AJ Brown. Yeah. This is going to be an interesting test for them for sure. But anyway, again, thank you all for coming in. Thanks to Tainah and Dog. We'll do this again, hopefully in another couple weeks or so, midway through training camp. Giant fans, we will see you here on the Locked On Giants podcast tomorrow with the Mark Lewinsky interview. And don't forget, Tainah and Dog, they're doing a show tomorrow as well. So check them out and enjoy. We'll talk to you again soon, everybody. Take care. Have a good night.